This young man is the protagonist, Kai. One fateful day after his sudden awakening and the appearance of a gate, his world came to an end. His entire family was wiped out. Those vile creatures had slaughtered everyone. He wished he could have died too, but as the main character, he just couldn't die. A monster ripped his head clean off his neck, but after rolling a few times, he came back to life. Just as the monsters were about to leave, the protagonist jumped out to ambush them. But what chance did he have? A monster grabbed him by the neck and then tore off his arm. It threw him to the ground like a worthless piece of trash. The protagonist screamed in pain and defiance as his severed arm regenerated a new one in just a few seconds. The monster exclaimed with excitement, "Like a lizard's tail!" They cackled, deciding to keep him. If they captured the protagonist, they could have an endless supply of meat. They nicknamed the protagonist Lizard Tail and dragged him back to their dungeon. The regeneration skill that the system had given him had become his curse. Several years later, Lizard Tail was now older. Yet he looked just as pathetic as ever. He was chained up inside the dungeon by two monsters with a dog chain. Whenever they were hungry, they would tear off his limbs to eat, although the protagonist's lost limbs would regenerate immediately. The pain he felt would never disappear. Finding that insufficient, the monster devised another cruel game. The other monster was already used to this. He warned his companion not to mess around. Hair was Lizard Tail's weakness. If he dies, their food source is gone. The other monster laughed, but didn't stop. It unchained the protagonist and let him out. He stood up and rotated his arm a bit to relieve the stiffness. The monster told him to hurry up and come fight it. It provoked and insulted him relentlessly, causing him to charge forward in a rage. The monster precisely tore off his arm. It laughed with glee. Eating this way was more interesting and delicious. The protagonist tried to dodge and attack, but he was nothing compared to the beast. The protagonist mustered all his strength to inflict a minor wound on the monster, shoving his entire regenerating arm into its mouth. The monster choked, then furiously grabbed his face. The protagonist knew full well the monster wouldn't dare kill him, so he provoked it without restraint. The monster, who seemed to be the leader, sternly told the other not to be so reckless. He stood up and told his subordinate if he released the protagonist, he would take him to a village he had been saving. The other monster, delighted immediately, threw the protagonist to the ground. It had a new toy and no longer cared about him. The protagonist lay in a dazed heap on the ground. He was so tired. They wouldn't kill him and he couldn't die. He was chained and dragged by three monsters like an animal. They even shoved the chain into his mouth. Blood poured from his jaws, leaving a trail all along the path. Someone, likely a hunter, had begun tracking the monsters by following his trail of blood. The protagonist was being dragged away by the monster horde. Along the way, he kept screaming, hoping to warn others of the approaching monsters so they could escape. The monsters mocked his futile actions. Even if he screamed his lungs out, it was unlikely any villagers would hear him. Just then, the man who had been following the protagonist's blood trail arrived, guided here by his shouts. He had lost the blood trail midway. The protagonist told him if he could hear, he should run. What was he still doing here? "These are monsters," seeing the protagonist's pitiful state. The man gritted his teeth and said to leave it to him, a hunter from a top guild. Ignoring the jeering monsters, he pulled out a small bell from his pocket and shook it, creating a chiming sound to activate his special skill. An aura enveloped him as the monster was obliterated and the hunter's entire presence shifted. He introduced himself as Jude, a professional hunter. Another monster charged forward to attack Jude, but he effortlessly blocked its strike with a single hand. The rattle in his hand transformed into a sword, and with one swing, Jude sliced that monster in two. Seeing how ridiculously overpowered Jude was, the boss monster begged for mercy. But he wasn't listening, and Jude swung his sword to finish it off. After eliminating every monster, Jude freed the main character. He sat stunned for a moment, his thoughts racing before excitedly jumping to his feet and telling Jude he begged him to teach him how to hunt the monster that came from the gate. Jude clapped him on the shoulder, saying he was a hunter. If he wanted to join, he could offer him an internship at his guild. Jude walked over to the monster he had just taken down, poking it with his sword and realizing it was still alive. He raised his sword to finish the monster, but was stunned by the main character's next action. He picked up a rock and smashed his own hand to pieces. He then showed Jude his unique regeneration skill. The main character poured his heart out to Jude. For the past year, he'd been trapped by this ability granted by his system. He had been eaten by a monster over and over again. He looked at Jude with dead seriousness, saying he didn't want to be an intern, he just wanted to slaughter every last one of those monsters. The main character dropped to his knees and begged Jude, "Please teach me how to kill those monsters." Jude gripped his sword tightly, unable to believe the main character had endured such horrific things inside this dungeon. He sheathed his sword and asked him his name. The main character enthusiastically replied that he was Lizardtail. After answering, he suddenly realized that was the name the monsters had given him. Why did he blurt out that name? The main character gritted his teeth, deciding to accept it so he would never forget what that pack of monsters did to him. The main character shouted loud and clear that he was Lizardtail. Jude said he would teach him, but it would be incredibly painful. He gave him a demonstration. He approached the earlier monster, lifted it by the neck, and explained, "When a monster dies, its core disappears. This one's is still here, which means it's still alive." He said he would help him take this one down. When the boss monster woke up, it found itself chained to a massive rock. It was heavily wounded, coughing and sputtering. It had no clue why it was chained up like this. If it wanted to, it could easily break the chains. Jude sat on the monster's head, drove his sword into its shoulder, and told the monster to behave. Even if the chains couldn't hold it, he could still hear it move. If the chains broke, he would send it to the afterlife instantly. The monster was pissed but didn't dare do anything. Jude began to instruct the main character. He taught him how to acquire sacred power. The main character listened with intense focus. Every human is connected to sacred power. If you immerse your body in it, you will be able to see that sacred power. Then you will be able to use it. The main character nodded eagerly, but it was unclear if he understood anything at all. Jude explained that the first step to gaining this power was the awakening of a sixth sense, but it would take time to achieve it. Normally, it could take years or even a decade to unlock it, but Jude knew the main character was desperate for revenge, so he said he would help him open it. But he warned that this method was excruciatingly painful. The main character beat his chest, promising he could handle anything. Jude placed one hand on his head, shook the rattle with his other, and a dark aura enveloped the main character. Jude said that this was the sixth sense, the sense for sacred power. He asked how he felt. The main character said it was fine, not too painful. Jude put the rattle away. At first, this awakening requires you to slowly build trust with the saint to possess this new skill. If you force yourself to possess the holy power, the saint will reject you immediately, Lizardtail shouted. Then isn't this all meaningless? John Gu clapped his hands and said that even if the system rejects the possession, you can still force it and possess it incompletely. However, an unsuccessful possession will only grant half the holy power. A hunter like you won't be able to use the full holy power then, but you can use that half and it is enough to skewer any monster in a low-rank dungeon. Chu told the main character to close his eyes and focus on his sixth sense. Lizardtail did as he was told, closing his eyes to feel it out when he suddenly sensed something that made him snap his eyes open, panting heavily as he knelt. Chu approached and asked if he could still endure it. This is like holding a gate open. You have to force yourself not to let it go after summoning the saint. The main character took a deep breath and closed his eyes to try again. His eyes turned pitch black and he gritted his teeth trying to hold on to the holy power. Lizardtail tensed every muscle in his body to keep the holy power from escaping. Chu said he was doing it right and would be a credit to any guild. All that was left was to endure the pain. Lizardtail dug his feet into the ground, gaining momentum to charge at the monster chained to a rock. He said he had to skewer it. The main character launched an attack at the monster. It broke its chains and dodged his attack. Chu told him that if he could defeat the monster, he would give it to him. The monster looked bewildered. It could not believe Lizardtail had gotten so strong so quickly. It did not know what John Gu had done to him, but it would not let itself be defeated by him. Lizardtail seemed like he was on something. He felt immense pain, but also an incredible high. He laughed like a madman and charged to attack the monster. The monster slashed at his leg and Lizardtail collapsed. The monster was about to put a hole in his head, but surprise. He was just pretending to be tricked the whole time. The main character counterattacked, swinging his fist straight into the monster's face and sending it flying. The monster coughed violently as it was heavily injured. Lizardtail seemed to have gone berserk. He muttered about skewering the monster as he charged forward. Chu watched from the sidelines, thinking this red-headed brat was terrifyingly impressive, moving that fast even while in pain. This new hunter had more talent than him. Chu concluded that Lizard Tail's sense for holy power was a unique. Meanwhile, the battle raged on, and no matter how many times the monster stabbed the main character, he seemed to feel no pain, still energetically charging forward to fight. The monster changed its tactics, pulling out the spikes on its back to form a sword. Seeing the monster had a weapon, the main character laughed maniacally and copied it. He pulled off his own arm, using the bone as a weapon. The monster was irritated by his smug face and raised its sword to charge. The main character raised the arm he had just broken off to block, and the monster could not cut through it. Chu, watching, was also surprised by the main character's action. Because he had pulled it out with holy magic, there was no way the monster could cut through it. The main character shouted his name was Doma. He used his other arm to knock the monster away and grabbed one of its arms. Doma used his severed arm to cut off the monster's arm. The monster screamed in pain, using its remaining hand to swing its sword to keep its distance from him. The monster quickly thought that it needed to aim for Lizard Tail's head now. It gripped the sword with its remaining hand and charged to attack. However, the main character just had to flick his hand and the monster's sword shattered. The monster fell into a crisis. It dropped its sword and turned to flee. It felt the same fear as when it faced Chu. Unlike last time, the monster realized its end was near and turned tail, not daring to look back. The main character charged from behind, grabbing its arm and sending its head flying. The monster spat a curse before its data was erased by the system. Doma picked up the monster's head. He mimicked the very act the creature had performed on him earlier. He named this moment the start of his revenge, then tossed the head to the ground like garbage. Doma was filled with a grim satisfaction. He silently informed his parents in heaven that it had all begun. His revenge would be to wipe out every last monster, whether they came from a gate or a dungeon. Cheng-gu called out for him to get a move on, saying he would take him near the village. The two made their way towards the settlement. Doma asked Cheng-gu what would happen if it took too long to achieve his awakening. Cheng-gu looked at him and replied that his hatred would shorten the time needed. Of course, he did not expect it to happen overnight. As the two walked and talked, a massive explosion suddenly erupted behind them. They immediately dashed toward the sound. Villagers were fleeing in terror as a horde of monsters. A grotesque monster opened its massive maw. Just as it was about to lunge at a young boy, our hero arrived in the nick of time to intervene. He launched himself forward and unleashed a furious assault on the monster. Caught off guard, it was sent tumbling to the ground. The other monsters were stunned to find a hunter, someone clearly from a powerful guild present. One cowardly creature turned to flee. However, it only got a few steps before running right into Chung. He was furious because there were supposed to be guards on duty, but they were nowhere to be found. The remaining monsters charged at Cheng-gu, thinking that if they took down both humans, it would be over. But this game was not going to be that easy. Cheng-gu swung his sword, and with a single slash, two monsters were obliterated. He swung again at the remaining group, felling one while another shrieked and fled. The fleeing monster was met by Doma, whose punch sent its head flying. Having saved the villagers, the two were met with their heartfelt gratitude and emotional cheers. Amidst the celebration, Doma noticed a child who had just been orphaned. He felt a surge of frustration, believing he had arrived too late. Cheng-gu patted his head comfortingly, telling him to focus on those he saved. As for the fallen, he would handle it. A man identifying himself as the village chief stepped forward to thank them on behalf of everyone. He said that if they needed anything, he would provide it. Cheng-gu pushed Doma toward the chief, mentioning the boy needed food and fresh clothes. The chief enthusiastically called for the villagers to prepare a meal. Instantly, Doma was whisked away by a crowd of grateful people. Cheng-gu turned his expression darkening and walked toward three guards who had just returned from wherever they had been slacking off. They grew fearful upon seeing his menacing glare. The guard in the middle knew better and immediately apologized. The one beside him, however, was clearly a rookie. He tried to argue back, saying they only slacked off because no monster had appeared in ages. Cheng-gu stared them down and asked what would have happened if he had not been there. The death toll would have been much higher. After that harsh scolding, the three guards became completely silent, not daring to utter another word. Cheng-gu turned to leave. He told them to go and bow their heads in apology to the victims. Later that evening, while Cheng-gu was keeping watch from a tree, Doma approached him. The boy had been given fresh clothes, a bath, and a proper haircut. Cheng-gu remarked that he cleaned up nicely. The main character sheepishly rubbed his head. He bowed his head and thanked Cheng-gu. He then declared that he now had a purpose. He would eradicate every single monster, learning every skill necessary to do so. He would make it as if they never existed. Doma stared into the distance, his resolve hardening. He had decided to become a hunter. He then knelt before Chungu. He begged Chungu to accept him as a disciple. He wanted to see the path that lay ahead. Chungu walked right past him, and for a moment Doma thought he had been rejected. But to his surprise, the man had accepted him. A delighted Doma scrambled to his feet and followed. The two then departed from the village. The boy Doma had saved came to see the two of them off. He shouted after them, saying that one day he too would save people just like them. The two set off on their journey. Chungu said that before they began training, he would teach Doma a bit more about what it means to be a hunter. A monster hunter is someone who protects humanity and takes down any monster that threatens it. The system recognizes two main classifications of a monster hunter, which seem similar at first but are fundamentally different. The first is the Guardian Force. They only defend human territory and will eliminate any monster that appears from a gate or dungeon to invade it. The second type is the Elite Squad, which ventures out from human territory to hunt monsters. Chu asked Doma which team he wanted to join, perhaps within a powerful guild. Doma answered without hesitation that he wanted to join the Elite Squad. Chu said it was time to begin his training. The first exercise was simply running. Doma was stunned when he heard this. Seeing his reaction, Chu burst out laughing. Running is the most fundamental movement. You'll be running while using your power, so you need to learn a skill for maintaining your stamina. Doma let out an "oh" as it finally clicked. He eagerly started running with Chu right alongside him. The two ran from night until morning until Doma was completely gassed. He was panting for air like he was about to pass out. Chu, on the other hand, walked beside him without a single drop of sweat. When Doma demanded a break, Chu simply asked if he hadn't just rested. Doma argued back that just meant running slower. When did I get a break? Chu decided to give him a break. He told him to take down the horde of monsters in front of them. Doma was delighted by this change in his training. He ripped off one of his arms to use as a weapon and eagerly charged towards the monster horde. The monsters saw a human approaching and thought their next meal had just been served. They charged forward as well. Doma used the arm to smash them one by one, wiping out the entire first wave that rushed him. Another monster that tried a sneak attack from behind also got its head punched clean off. Chu shouted from the sidelines, telling Doma to practice dodging before he goes in for the kill. He demonstrated the skill by dodging a monster and told Doma to practice. Doma followed his example, sidestepping an attack from another monster before blowing its head off. Another horde rushed in and Doma leaped into the air to evade them. While he was distracted, another clever monster took the opportunity to bite his arm. The startled and annoyed protagonist grabbed it by the neck and slammed it to the ground just as another horde rushed toward him. Doma gritted his teeth and swore. He channeled immense energy into the arm he was wielding and swept through them all. But as one wave fell, another one charged in. They all met the same fate as the last group. He taunted the remaining monsters, which enraged them into a thoughtless charge. In the end, Doma had defeated every last monster and was lying down to rest among them. Chu then said, "You have rested enough, now get up and let's keep going." He said it was time to eat and they would have to get to the next village for food. So Doma had to start running again. The two of them ran from one village to the next. Every time they encountered a monster, he would defeat it and then continue running. He ran and ran for a few days, which turned into many days and then a few weeks. He had been running for so long that he had lost all track of time. He was on the verge of collapse before he could even reach the next village. The two of them finally stopped in a village. This village was quite large and Gu said they would eat on the way. He pointed to the sky as a ship with a dragon's head descended from above. The protagonist's eyes widened in awe. Chu clapped him on the shoulder and said if he wanted to eat good food and sleep well, they needed to go to the hunter base, the main guild headquarters. Doma enthusiastically agreed. Doma and Chungu boarded the ship to continue their journey. The ship stopped in the city center. The two of them disembarked. Doma asked Chu in confusion why they were here. Weren't they supposed to be going to the hunter base? Chu explained that the new guild headquarters was in the city center, a result of the mass awakening event. He pointed to a massive tree and said that was their new hub. Doma was completely stunned. It was like a country boy seeing the big city for the first time, witnessing such high-class facilities. He asked what it takes to become a trainee hunter. Chu assured him not to worry as he would vouch for him. He warned Doma to be serious because as his sponsor for the Hunter Guild he'd be under intense scrutiny. Doma was taken inside to register. Since he was recommended by Chonggu, the system automatically placed him in an advanced bracket, a rare privilege for someone without a formal awakening. The receptionist asked where his hunter gear was. Doma bluntly replied that he would worry about it later. The receptionist was on the verge of blowing a gasket talking to him. If Chu hadn't brought him in, he wouldn't have tolerated such an attitude for a second. While Doma handled the registration paperwork, Chu waited outside. As he was reading a paper, someone came over to greet him. It was Battalion Commander Yan. The two greeted each other warmly, slapping each other on the shoulder. Doma finished his registration and saw some old man slapping his master's shoulder, so he scowled and questioned him. Chu pulled Doma's head down into a bow, introducing him to Yisan as his disciple. Yisan burst out laughing. Doma was being far too insolent. Yisan's two disciples couldn't stand it and stepped up to him. They warned him that next time he acted like that, they would shave his head. Doma wasn't one to back down from anyone. He glared back fiercely. Chu patted his shoulder, telling him to greet them properly. But Doma had more guts than brains. He immediately challenged them to a fight to see who was stronger and had a better primary skill. The two sides glared daggers at each other. The two masters just stood aside smiling. Yisan proposed a friendly wager with Chonggu, a one-on-one match to see whose student was stronger. Chu thought that was a fine idea. Yisan turned to the receptionist and told him to schedule a cleanup mission for a low-rank gate. The group headed to the station. Transportation was already arranged. The person there handed Chu a map. He turned back and called for the three disciples who were still locked in a staring contest to get in the vehicle. The vehicle sped across the desert like a bullet. Doma just fell asleep with his mouth hanging open. Yisan's disciple Gon propped his feet up on the side of the vehicle and started taunting Doma. This time, Doma was smarter and didn't pick a fight, just smirking disdainfully. Gion thought Doma was laughing at him and was about to lunge for an all-out brawl, but was held back by Dong-suk. Chu drew his sword and declared the operation had begun. All three students immediately got into a fighting stance. Doma used his speed to charge ahead first. Yisan's two students were no slouches either. They also unleashed their power right after him. The three of them bid Chu farewell and dashed forward. Dong-suk placed a hand on his heart, yelled, "Heart!" Explosion and transform. Flames erupted around Dong-suk and even his eyebrows caught fire. Dong-suk accelerated, bursting ahead. He swept his flaming hand towards the horde of monsters. A large patch of land was instantly scorched. Gon also charged furiously right behind him. He tapped his staff against his stomach and also transformed lightning enveloped his body. Daeon also surged forward, slamming his staff into the ground. A large chunk of the ground shattered. Gon turned back and smirked at Doma, showing off. Doma immediately ripped an arm off a monster and started using it as a club. Yisan's two disciples stared with their eyes wide open. After a while, the three of them had cleared out the entire horde of monsters, finishing their first dungeon raid together. Doma was still relentlessly smashing the arm into the head of a monster that was already belly up. Gion asked what kind of training Chonggu put him through. He just replied. While they were talking, a monster suddenly launched a sneak attack from behind, impaling Doma straight through the chest. He couldn't react in time. Doma let out a hacking cough. The monster, disgusted by how filthy he was, tossed him to the ground. Doma was furious, gritting his teeth in rage. Gion gave him a thumbs up in praise. Dong-suk, however, was not as impressed. If that had been anyone but Doma, they would have been dead instantly. The lead monster roared in fury because Doma's group had dared to take down its squad. Doma arrogantly charged forward to provoke it. Yeah, it was me, so what? Just after getting a few taunts, and Doma was stabbed through the stomach by the monster and sent flying once again. Next, it was Gyun and Dong-shuk's turn to charge. Dong-shuk summoned a massive flame to engulf the creature, but the fire had no effect on the monster. Chu, watching from the boat, wasn't too bothered by this. Finally, a worthy opponent has appeared. Doma stood up, tore off his tattered shirt, and ripped off one of his own arms to use as a weapon before charging forward. Gion and Dong-shuk attacked from both sides, but the creature blocked them. Doma attacked from above. He used the severed arm to strike the back of its neck. The monster was startled. It turned and threw a punch right at Doma's face. Luckily, Dong-shuk struck the creature's arm, deflecting the blow. Doma only lost an arm in the exchange. Gion seized the opportunity, thrusting his thunderstaff into the monster's stomach. It coughed up blood and was sent flying. Doma stood frozen solid, completely stunned. If Dongshuk hadn't intervened just now, his head would have been blown clean off. Gion turned and called out to him, snapping him out of it. Meanwhile, the monster wasn't defeated yet. It rose from the rubble. Now, it was going to use its full power. The creature took its staff and dipped it into the halo above its head. The staff transformed into an axe. The creature swung the axe, firing a blast of energy toward the three of them. They quickly ducked to dodge it. The ground behind them was annihilated by the force of the axe's swing. Dongshuk turned to Gion and said that to fight a monster of this level, the kind you'd only find in the deepest part of a dungeon after its awakening, they needed to increase their power. The two understood each other and prepared to do just that. Gion activated level 3 control. Electricity crackled around him and 2 ears sprouted from his head. Chong-gu had previously explained to Doma that these control levels range from 1 to 10. Level 1 is the ability to visualize holy power, while level 10 represents a complete manifestation. Doma couldn't even crawl his way to level 1 yet. In terms of raw strength, he was definitely above level 1. But a true hunter must follow the path of holy power. He could only fight a powerful monster by using holy power. This meant if he encountered an awakened monster, he wouldn't stand a chance. Doma got seriously pissed off, stomping his feet on the ground, and slapped himself a few times to calm down. Doma took a deep breath, feeling the breath of the holy flame. Elsewhere, Gion and Dongshuk were teaming up to fight the monster. Dongshuk's fire was useless. Gion struck it with his staff, but the creature parried the blow. Even though Gion had gotten a bit stronger, the monster still looked down on him with It swung its axe, sending Gion flying. He was slashed once and suffered a serious injury. Dongshuk rushed over to support him and assess the situation. Dongshuk's fire had no effect on the monster, and the power of its halo was even stronger. Right now, they were completely outmatched. Dongshuk said he would obstruct its vision while Gion aimed for its back. As Gion charged, Dongshuk timed it perfectly and clapped his hands, causing the monster's eyes to explode. Its vision was temporarily lost. Gion quickly got behind it and struck with his staff. The monster coughed up a bit of blood. It gritted its teeth and cursed. "Damn it, you're ganging up on me!" Gion smirked contemptuously. "Catch me if you can." But the monster didn't even bother chasing Gion. It charged at Dongshuk instead. He calmly clapped his hands again. The monster lost its sight once more. It was unbelievably furious. "Have you all gone mad just to become monster food?" Gion slung his staff over his shoulder and sneered. "If anything, it's the monsters who came through the gate because they fear the human hunter from our guild." The monster screamed, afraid of what the two sides were about to clash again, when suddenly a plume of black smoke rose in the distance. The source of the smoke was Doma. He was powering up to accumulate strength. Chong-gu had previously taught him how to defeat an awakened monster. Holy power is vast, but everyone has a limit, so no one can possess too much of it. With this limit, a lack of awareness will block the flow of holy power. Chu showed him how to use his full power to break that limit and obtain more holy power, a unique skill. Doma followed the instructions, using a unique skill to channel sacred energy through his entire body with his leg as an anchor. The next step was to control and accelerate the flow. A critical part of his awakening, Doma screamed as blood gushed from his nose, momentarily losing his footing and disrupting the energy flow. The rapid flow of energy was too much, and the backlash from his powerful skill was unavoidable. Doma's blood splattered everywhere as he was on the verge of a berserker transformation. Only because Doma possessed a regenerative body and immense mental fortitude, a gift from the system, could he attempt such a reckless move. Any other hunter would have been dead already. Yisun's 2 disciples and even the monster paused their fight to witness Doma's incredible power-up. The monster recalled shattering his shoulder, but quickly realized Doma had a regenerative ability. The creature immediately changed its target and charged toward the newly empowered hunter. He charged forward as well, and the two clashed in a chaotic dance of battle. Knowing Doma's new power wouldn't last long, Gon and Jong-hyuk, his fellow guild members, also rushed in. Chu was still watching from the sidelines, but fearing he'd miss the full HD action inside this makeshift dungeon, he moved closer for a better view. The monster swung its axe down on him. Doma cried out in pain before swinging his fist and smashing the creature's face. The monster coughed up blood, gritting its teeth. It swung its axe to slash at him again, but this time Doma used his enhanced reflexes to evade it. The monster then brought its axe down from above, but the hunter successfully parried the blow. Jong-hyuk dove down from above, unleashing his eternal flame skill with a punch to the ground. The earth shattered, causing the monster to lose its balance. Doma dashed to the side and punched the monster in the face, sending it flying once more. The creature spat up more blood, coughing violently after the powerful blow. Having maintained his powered-up state for a while, Doma was growing exhausted. He panted heavily. Gion asked if his new power was at its limit. Doma replied that he wouldn't go down until this monster was defeated. Jong-hyuk turned and told Doma to hold off the monster. While he prepared a powerful magic formation, Doma and Gon advanced, ready to face the threat from the gate. Behind them, Jong-hyuk began to summon his flames. Doma and Gion bickered, neither hunter willing to yield to the other. The monster rose from the pile of rubble. It tossed its axe aside, deciding to play its trump card, a hidden skill. The monster touched both of its hands to the ring on its head. A black ooze enveloped its arms, a sign of a dark power. The monster gritted its teeth, enduring the pain. It then shot forward, appearing instantly in front of Gion. Luckily, Gion was agile enough to lean back and dodge. He looked at the monster's arms and quickly realized it was absorbing the demonic ring's power into its body. A forbidden Doma swung his leg to kick the monster. However, it caught his leg with surprising strength and threw the hunter a great distance. The monster leaped, pursuing Doma. It delivered a downward punch, smashing him violently into the ground. The monster grabbed him by the neck and raised its hand to chop off his head. Just in time, Gion rushed in and jabbed his staff into the monster's back, sending it flying. Gion turned back, telling Doma to get up, but he was nowhere to be seen. The monster dug its feet into the ground to stop its momentum. While its attention was elsewhere, Doma dove from above, punching the monster. It smashed face first into the ground. Doma then rained a barrage of punches down on the monster's body. It endured the pain, gritting its teeth, and swung a hand to grab Doma's face. The monster retaliated with a punch to his gut. Doma also reached out, grabbing the creature by the neck. The monster screamed in agony and was forced to release its grip on his face. Doma coughed violently. The creature clutched its neck where the hunter had grabbed it. As it was cursing, a bolt of lightning struck its arm. Immediately, a volley of other bolts pierced its body. The monster screamed in pain. It was completely immobilized by Gion's skill and couldn't move. Gion turned and shouted, "Doma, hurry up! I can't hold this monster for much longer. Stop messing around and finish it in one blow." While Doma stood there, stunned, Jong-hyuk, a high-ranking member of their guild, rushed over. Half of his body was wreathed in flames as he explained he still needed more time to prepare his ultimate skill. The monster, sensing its impending doom, desperately tried to call for a truce. Jong-hyuk approached the monster, aimed his hand directly at its body, and unleashed a massive fireball. The orb passed through it, entering deep inside the creature. The monster was incinerated from within, vaporizing in an instant, leaving only a pile of dried skin. Jia-on let out a sigh of relief and collapsed to the ground. Doma asked if he was sure they had finished off the monster. Jia-on barely had a moment to rest before he had to jump up, grabbing his staff to stop Dong-shuk from being crushed by holy power. Dong-shuk lay on the ground with his mouth agape as the flames continued to burn uncontrollably. Jia-on cursed under his breath. "Damn it, it's too late. We have to get that bracelet off Dong-shuk's right wrist quickly. Doma said he'd do it." Just then, Jo-gu rushed over. He told the two of them to step aside and let him handle it. He waved his hand and then placed it on Dong-shuk's face. Jo-gu chanted the words to a healing skill, and after a moment, Dong-shuk returned to normal. He sat up with a start. Dong-shuk quickly bowed his head, thanking Jo-gu for saving him. Jo-gu put away his staff and patted Dong-shuk's shoulder reassuringly, telling him not to worry about it. But in reality, Jo-gu's hand had been burned. The three of them had finally completed their first dungeon mission. While the others headed back to the vehicle, Doma stood before the corpse of the monster they had just defeated, muttering to himself. He thought about naming the monster "I'm sorry," but unfortunately it was already toast. This time only two of Yan's disciples were leaving. Jo-gu told them to inform Yan that he and Doma would be heading north. Jia-on and Dong-shuk waved goodbye to Jo-gu and left, promising to be stronger next time. The vehicle sped across the desert. Jia-on told Dong-shuk to be more careful controlling his holy power next time. Otherwise, that lizard-tail guy would have become the main character. That evening, Jo-gu and Doma stopped to rest at a nearby shelter. The place looked like a guard post, but it was actually a safe house they had prepared in advance, so it was well stocked. There were even spare clothes. Joe-gu told Doma to change wash-up and get some sleep. Seeing Doma just standing there, Joe-gu asked if he didn't like it. He said that wasn't it. He was just thinking about how his body had gotten stronger since his awakening, but he wanted to reach even greater heights. Joe-gu asked him how far he wanted to go. Doma replied that he didn't even know, but now he could no longer tear off his own arm to use as a weapon like before. Today, while fighting the monster, the arm he ripped off exploded instantly. It couldn't handle the power that surpassed its limits. Doma grumbled as he held the bone. If he kept fighting with a weapon like this, how could he ever hope to win? Joe-gu touched the staff hanging at his own hip and asked Doma if this would work. A hunter like them often needs a weapon that can withstand a large amount of power. Doma apologized sadly. He said he just preferred fighting with bones. Joe-gu told him to focus on just one thing. He sat there lost in thought, not knowing what to do now. Joe-gu hung his coat on a hook and got into bed. He told Doma to stop thinking and go to sleep to regain his strength. Doma lay down, but he still couldn't sleep. His mind kept racing, as he currently had no interest in anything. Suddenly, a new idea struck him. He could channel a flow of energy into the ground, draw it up through his body, and then transfer it into his arm, essentially creating a new skill. Doma sat up ready to try it immediately. But then he remembered that if he did that, his arm would explode before he could even tear it off. Doma convinced himself to listen to his teacher and go to sleep, deciding to try tomorrow. But suddenly, another new idea came to him and his eyes shot wide open. What if he focused the energy on the bone itself? Perhaps the system would allow the bone to withstand the power and not explode if he only channeled it there. Doma sat up again. He looked at Joe-gu sleeping in the other bed, then lay back down. You need to listen to your master and get some rest. Less than 3 seconds later, Doma had already snuck outside to test his new skill. Who could possibly sleep at a time like this anyway? Doma tried to summon his holy energy, channeling the flow of power directly into his arm bones as if guided by a system. However, he couldn't get the energy to flow through his bones. It just passed through his arm instead. Doma cursed in frustration, yelling at it to just go in already. Suddenly, his arm began to deform from within. It bulged grotesquely like some kind of monster and showed signs of spreading. Doma hastily severed the arm completely. He breathed a sigh of relief, almost having to live with an arm like that for the rest of his life. He realized that if he didn't focus on channeling the flow, his arm would swell the moment he tried to suppress the power surge, with regeneration a side effect of his recent awakening. Doma decided to try again. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to the arm he had just severed. Doma cried out in joy. The arm hadn't exploded. He had finally succeeded. He could now feel the power emanating from his arm. Doma slapped himself awake and began experimenting again to perfect the technique. In the blink of an eye, morning arrived. The first rays of sunlight streamed into the room. Chu woke up and noticed Doma was gone. He figured the kid was just too eager and had gotten an early start. Chu opened the door to find a bloody mess everywhere, like the aftermath of a dungeon raid, and Doma fast asleep with his mouth wide open. A bird flew over and dropped a small pouch next to Doma. Seeing him asleep, it opened its beak and gave his cheek a sharp peck. When Doma showed no reaction, it began pecking his face repeatedly. Doma woke up in a daze. The bird sensed the holy energy radiating from his body and flew off in a panic. Doma looked at the parcel beside him, wondering what it was. Chu explained it was his new guild uniform. He said he'd thrown out Doma's old shirt because it was too torn up. Doma looked at the bag and asked if they would have to pay for it. Chu said yes, and that if he needed anything, he could request it from the Demon Hunter army. Doma opened the parcel and held up a gem, asking what it was. Chu explained it was a request orb. He just had to write down his request and channel his holy energy into it. You can ask for anything you need, like backup, for instance. And as long as you have it, I can track your location too. Doma was impressed. The Hunter army sure has a lot of interesting gadgets. Chu then reminded him to fold his blanket properly after waking up. This guard post is used by many people, so don't leave it dirty. He told Doma to grab a broom from the back and clean up the mess he made last night. While Doma was sweeping, some strangers arrived at the guard post. A man and woman were arguing about fighting a monster that had emerged from a gate. The man named Tesu walking behind them seemed all too used to this. He let out a bored yawn. He greeted Chu enthusiastically upon seeing him. After Doma finished cleaning and came inside, Chu introduced him to Tesu as well. Tesu greeted him cheerfully too. He pointed to the young man and woman with him, explaining they were his team members. The young man's name was Suon, and the young woman was Himo. Chu mentioned that Tesu also has a regenerative body just like Doma. Doma silently recalled his battle with the monster. Judging by its expression, it wasn't the first time it had seen a regenerative body. Chu and Tesu sat down for a chat. Tesu was a member of the Guard Corps, working like a dog, and had only just gotten a break yesterday. He had to go back to work soon, and was feeling totally drained, breaking his back for pennies on the dollar. Tesu stretched out on the bed, thinking about his upcoming duties when a bold idea struck him. He shot up and asked Chu if he knew about a few cases of people suddenly disappearing near a gate. It seemed Chu didn't know anything about it either. Tesu grinned from ear to ear. Lately, reports of missing persons have been on the rise, and he's been investigating them secretly. He stealthily stalked a drunk man walking alone. Suddenly, a tentacle shot out and coiled around the man, silencing his screams before dragging him away. A half-human, half-tentacle monster appeared. Tess, who was tailing them, saw the entire thing. This was how he confirmed that the monsters were abducting people. Tess figured he could find the monsters' lair if he tracked them north. Seeing Jude's interest, Tess was secretly pleased, but he maintained a serious facade, crossing his arms and claiming they emerged from a hidden dungeon, confirming the monster was capturing people beyond the border. He also knew they only operated at night and had already located one of their hideouts. Jude stroked his chin, lost in thought. Sensing the bait wasn't tempting enough, Tess dangled another piece of information. He feigned concern. Although he wasn't certain, it seemed all the abducted people were from the village. Just as he expected, John could not ignore this news. Tess was ecstatic. He told Jude he could be a squad leader for their temporary guild if he was interested. Jude stood up. He refused to lead, saying he did not grasp the situation well enough. If he were in charge, the whole mission would be a disaster, especially for a new hunter like him. John raised his hand and suggested Tess be the leader. Tess could not stop grinning. He was thrilled to have successfully lured Jude and his team. He let his true intentions slip out loud in his excitement. But Jude, being good-natured, did not mind. Feeling like a jerk, Tess got emotional and hugged John, sobbing. Tess rushed outside and told his 3 apprentices to rest up. They would move out at dusk. While waiting, John sat and meditated to clear his mind. Tess could not believe it telling him to rest, but instead he was communing with his sacred power. He turned to Doma and asked what his ability was. He needed to understand his skill to determine his role in the party. Doma sighed and explained that his skill was merely an incomplete manifestation, a result of a flawed awakening. Tess's jaw dropped, asking if he was an idiot. Why would he even try to commune with sacred power like that? Doma said he was still trying his best. But why did he have to sit here and talk to a noisy old man like Tess? Tess asked where he grew up to have such poor manners. Doma remained silent. He did not press the issue further. Tess stood and told everyone to get ready to move. The group traveled to a cliff and took cover there. Tess explained that this was the monster's territory. His team had been tracking them for 2 days now, ever since a gate anomaly was reported. After a short wait, the monsters appeared, dragging a cage filled with captured people. The victims inside were still alive, crying and begging for their lives. Doma could not hold back and was about to charge forward, but Tess stopped him. However, the main character was a reckless one, and he was not about to listen. He knew better than anyone what it felt like to be captured by a monster, so he had to skewer them. Tess grabbed him by the collar, preventing him from moving forward. He glared at him, saying that if he saved those people, now hundreds more would die. He had to sacrifice a few for the greater good. Tess told Doma to get lost if he did not like it. This was his mission. After being released, Doma did not dare to rush in recklessly again. He was forced to sit still and observe, frustrated by the lack of a proper alert system. Below, the people in the cage were about to be devoured by smaller monsters when a much larger one stopped them. It declared that it would be the first to feast. None of the others were to lay a hand on the prey. The other monster was furious at being stopped. The 2 monsters argued for a while. Doma let out a quiet sigh of relief. Tess ordered everyone to move carefully and avoid detection. Jude led his 3 apprentices ahead. Tess stayed behind, picking up stones and counting, estimating there were about 17 more monsters. He crushed the stones in his hand and tossed them down. He needed to strike quickly. His head was pounding. 2 swiftly followed behind Changgu's group. When they caught up, they discovered the area where each monster had gathered the cages holding their human captives, likely loot from a dungeon raid. The number of monster creatures here was significantly higher. Teu scoffed at how foolish this particular monster horde was. They should have focused on defending their gate before trying to. Tew turned and asked Chu, a fellow hunter, for his thoughts. He replied that it was nothing out of the ordinary for this kind of situation. This monster group is transporting humans, and it looks like there's a leader among them. This is their rally point. They had definitely come to the right place to stop them. Tew turned back and ordered his 3 protégés into position, each hunter ready for battle. They would target the group of approximately 30 enemies. Below, as the monster pack was gloating over their captured humans, Chu, a high-ranking hunter from their guild, leaped down into their formation. Tew had tasked him with luring as Chu drew his sword, confronting the commander directly. The monster leader leaped back but was still wounded by the swift attack, a testament to Chu's powerful skill. Its limbs went weak as it collapsed. Chu charged forward single-handedly, dealing with the weaker monster minions. The leader screamed at its underlings, demanding to know why they were just watching instead of attacking. The lesser monster minions obeyed and charged, their attention completely fixed on Chu. Meanwhile, Cyan seized the opportunity to neutralize all the non-combatant monster types. He pulled a potion from his bag, chugged it, and activated his unique skill EA. Cyan's power, a result of his awakening, was blood control. But overusing this skill would drain his life force, so he had to be careful. However, he could control a vast amount of blood if he managed to mix his own into the monster bodies. Cyan used his blood to bind the entire monster pack. He then turned and signaled for Himo, another member of their hunter party, to protect him. Himo gripped her long broadsword, slammed it into the ground, and activated her sacred ability Peon. Her unique skill was a form of restorative power. Her skill allowed her to instantly heal an opponent's skin at the moment of impact, preventing any blood from spurting out. Even if a monster was decapitated, no blood would be spilled. Tesu touched his forehead. He called upon his patron to Uchini, completely ignoring Doma, who was whining beside him, eager to join the fray against the monster horde. Tew grabbed 2 handfuls of dirt and crushed them in his palms. Instantly, thanks to his powerful skill, 21 monster creatures were decapitated. After the job was done, he sighed and complained of a headache, noting that this method saved them the trouble of a long chase. Tew then took out a gem, enchanted it with a quick shake, and handed it to a newly rescued girl, a common procedure for any hunter, telling her to hold on to it and that a proper rescue team from the guild would arrive soon. The girl burst into tears, thanking him profusely. The other rescued civilians were also immensely grateful to the hunter team for saving their lives. Meanwhile, the monster commander, bound by Cyan's blood skill, struggled with all its might but couldn't break free. It couldn't believe it had been captured by a mere hunter. It glanced at Chu, recognizing his immense power. The monster thought that if it had just used its bare hands from the start, it could have defeated the hunter. Tew walked over and told Himo to sever the monster's hand. She did so without a moment's hesitation. The creature was utterly shocked by the swift action. It had heard rumors of a special hunter who could cut without drawing blood. It turned out to be Himo. Tesu then stepped in front of the captured monster group and said that if they could answer his question, he would spare them. He asked where they planned to go after leaving this rally point, perhaps to another gate. The monster looked bewildered. It had barely uttered a single word before Himo took its head clean off. Tew simply turned to question the next one in line. The monster commander screamed that they would never talk. If it revealed their plans, its entire supply line, controlled by a powerful system, would be cut off. Tew coldly ordered Himo to sever the commander's limbs and spine. She obeyed the hunter's command without question. The monster leader could no longer even sit up, lying in a heap on the ground. It taunted Tesu's hunter party, telling them to head north to the main dungeon if they thought they were so powerful. They captured many a hunter there. Doma couldn't stand it. He said he would put the creature out of its misery. But Tesu stopped him, telling him to let it suffer. He then turned to question another monster. This monster knew nothing and was promptly skewered. Tesu moved on to the next one. This one obediently confessed that the path was for Bill Dupas. Chu was surprised to hear that. He never expected a monster of that caliber to be mentioned here. The old monster screamed at the other one not to speak such nonsense. The words had barely left its mouth before Surion's blood skill sealed its lips shut. The other monster continued speaking. There is a path leading to a tunnel at the northern border. The entrance to that dungeon is right here. It told Tesu that if he let it go, it would open the entrance. That gate could only be opened with a demon's ring. Tesu readily agreed. Cooperate and he would spare its life, otherwise it was game over. The old monster cursed the other one for being a coward. Why would it open the door for that pack of hunters? Before the old one could finish its sentence, the other monster stabbed it to death. The monster went to a corner of the cave and activated a mechanism with its sword. The cliff face above began to part, revealing a new gate. Taesu let the monster go, as promised, but as soon as it reached a turn, it was eliminated by another group of hunters. These people were the rescue team. They returned to report to Taesu that the rescue was complete, and they would provide backup since the primary support team from their guild was still on another mission. Taesu led the way into the cavern. In a secret location, an anonymous black monster reported to its superior, Nava, about the stone door being opened. Nava stroked the pet in its hand, speculating that the hunters were probably on their way. It ordered its subordinate to prepare for battle before the guild leadership became aware of the situation. The subordinate declared it would go skewer the horde of hunters before they arrived and return safely. The moment it finished speaking, its head flew from its shoulders. Nava reminded it that a predator should never turn its back on its prey. Doma's group stepped into the cavern. They walked on, without seeing anything, and with time to kill, they began to introduce themselves. The three members of the support team were Good, Bell, and Jin Taesu, who asked about their abilities while warming up. The other three replied that they didn't have any special skill. They were the Chosen Ones. It was the first time Doma had heard of such a novel concept as the Chosen after his awakening. John Gu explained it to him. The Chosen are individuals who can only wield holy power granted by a divine system. However, the Supreme Lord helped countless people and didn't want that power to be monopolized by just one person. That's why they still can't use special holy abilities. Instead, they can use the Lord's holy power without possessing it, and their holy power levels up to level 10 faster than anyone else. The three of them said they had all reached level 6 or level 7 already. Doma pointed at them in frustration. While he had to work his butt off to possess holy power, these guys could easily use it without even owning it. It's like a cheat code. God wasn't offended and just laughed. As the three were chatting, Taesu interrupted their conversation. He called them to get into position. Taesu took the lead with the others following closely behind. Suan asked Taesu, "Are there no monsters here?" Taesu replied that these monsters were very proud. They're probably just using some kind of strategy. They claimed this path leads to the northern border, but we can't be sure if that's true. If it's a place that goes that far, I'll bet it's not going to be a safe road. The group suddenly came to a halt. Suran heard a noise from behind, prompting them to assume a battle-ready stance inside the dangerous dungeon. Suddenly, the surrounding walls shattered. A horde of monster creatures appeared. The hunter named Chu quickly drew his sword and slashed at the monsters before him. The three members of the escort team flawlessly used a wind skill to blow away the debris flying toward them. They were surrounded by monsters, all of which were made of stone. The monsters were all undergoing a rapid awakening, and fighting them would be incredibly draining. This was yet another concept Doma didn't understand, so he turned to Chu for answers. He explained that according to the system, these monsters could transform or enhance their weapons using a demonic circle. It was just like that strange monster Doma had encountered before. Teo turned and yelled at Chu to focus. This was not the time for a lesson. They could lose all their strength, but they had to endure if they ever hoped to reach the gate. Before Teo could finish speaking, Doma acted faster than he could think. He charged forward with his enhanced arm ready. Teo turned to blame Gu. "Why is your student so brainless?" Teo Ten ordered the rest of their guild party to advance and eliminate the monsters. Doma used his newly enhanced arm to slash at a monster. He was filled with excitement as he tested his new weapon. Watching Doma Chu was pleased to see he could now maintain his holy energy skill for much longer. He also focused on the attack. As Doma fought with all his might, a monster suddenly launched a sneak attack from a distance. It fired several tendrils as a ranged attack, but that was never going to work on him. He countered with his arm, knocking the startled monster back. While the young hunter Doma was fighting the tentacle monster, another creature hiding on the ceiling noticed his regenerative body. It grinned slyly, saying it would report back to Nava. The tentacle monster taunted Doma, yelling, "If you are so tough, then come up here. Let us fight again like real men." He pointed to the monster's shoulder and asked, "Is that a sword on you?" The tentacle monster was thrilled that someone had finally noticed it. Doma said that sword brought back some seriously awful memories. He asked the tentacle monster if it knew another creature named Vengeance. Did the tentacle monster recognize that name? It screamed, unable to believe Doma could have possibly defeated the monster with that name. It shot its tentacles at Doma, but none of them connected. It panicked and reached for the two swords on its back, but it was too damn late. See you in the next life. The other monster returned to report to Nava about a person with a regenerative body. Nava was pleased to hear the news. The old man stroked the pet on his arm, saying that would be a fine gift for the table. He turned to his subordinate Huro and ordered him to prepare a gift and respond to those hunters. Huro left to carry out his orders. Meanwhile, Tessu's group had finished off the horde of monsters. They planned to rest for a moment before moving on. But it seemed something wasn't about to let them rest. Huro arrived carrying 2 blood-soaked bags filled entirely with people. He came to deliver a message from Nava telling them if they don't hurry, they'll end up saving Jack Squat. Seeing the pile of captured people, everyone there was obviously furious. He was about to charge forward, but Tessu stopped him. He turned and asked the monster Huro where they could find and exterminate the root of all these monsters. Huro pulled a piece of meat from its stomach. It replied kindly from where it came from. "Did you want me to be more specific?" "In your dreams, pal." Huro laughed provocatively. The members of Tessu's group were obviously enraged. Huro didn't stop. It continued to express its joy in hunting people. It told the hunters that if they didn't hurry, they would truly save nothing at all. While Huro was gloating, Tessu crushed it into nothingness. He knew this was a trap, a classic dungeon ploy. He turned to Surion and told him to get the blood ready. Following orders, Surion activated his level 5 holy skill, using his blood to impale several monsters and erect a massive wall of blood. Tessu ordered Surion to quickly find their base. Surion manipulated his blood, sending it slithering into every corner of the cave-like dungeon to search. After a moment of searching, he turned to Tessu and reported finding a deep pool. Tessu commanded him to focus his power and probe deeper into it. Surion used his blood to bore straight through. Inside was indeed Neva's stronghold. She left the mass of blood hovering, not destroying it immediately. She wanted the hunter to see what she had prepared. She ordered 2 of her underlings to go out and welcome the hunter party. Surion reported that the chasm was too deep and his blood couldn't penetrate any further. Tessu figured that must be the right spot then. He told him to retract his power and mark the path. The monsters were clearly waiting for them to enter as if it were a trap set by the system. Surion marked the path with his blood and then retracted his power. Tessu's team followed the blood trail, heading straight for the monster's den. Nava and her subordinates were already waiting there. Upon seeing Nava, Doma became indignant and questioned a nearby monster. "Who the hell is this sitting there like some high-ranking guild master?" The monster didn't even bother to answer him, ignoring his rant. Annoyed, Doma simply chopped its head off with a hand strike. He then turned to the other monsters with a cocky grin. They didn't make a move until they received an order. He smirked and then waded into their formation, slaughtering the monsters with his bare hands. Nava was displeased by Doma's insolence. They were in the middle of a pleasant conversation, and he'd already resorted to violence. Tessu didn't stop Doma either, smirking contemptuously at Nava's group. They were going to fight anyway. "Might as well get it over with quickly," Nava snorted in contempt. This was why she hated children, especially overconfident ones like him who had no idea what they were up against after their awakening. She snapped her fingers, and a hidden gate in the corner of the room opened, revealing a group of handcuffed people. They were terrified, completely unaware of where they were. Tessu's group's expressions immediately darkened, and Nava burst out laughing. She ordered the monsters in the room to start devouring the humans. Immediately, the monsters that had been standing idly by for Doma rushed toward the humans like starved leeches. Tessu's group scrambled to take down the monsters and protect the civilians. She let the humans and monsters fight it out, knowing that once they exhausted themselves, everything would fall under her control. Chu struggled to fight while protecting the civilians, leaving him no time to attack the monsters. The hunter team was in a tough spot. Tessu told Surion to try and buy him some time. Surion replied that he couldn't hold on much longer. He had already expended too much of his blood while scouting the path. As Tessu's team was pushed into a corner, Nava continued to leisurely watch the spectacle from her throne. Chu gritted his teeth in frustration, vowing to snap that witch's neck. He drew his sword and unleashed a powerful slash. The monsters in front of him were cut down. Tessu turned back and shouted for the civilians to run through. However, they still hesitated. They were terrified what if they were killed while running across. Only after Himo guaranteed their safety did the civilians begin to move in a single-file line. Tesu ordered the others to stay close and protect the civilians while he would handle those who had yet to move. Sitting above, Nava burst into laughter. Tesu's group had sent their strongest fighters to rescue the humans. They were doomed. She turned and gave an order to her subordinate. Hearing the command, the underling leaped down from above. Meanwhile, Doma was gleefully farming monsters when Nava's subordinate suddenly charged him. The creature landed a single punch that sent Doma flying so far he disappeared from sight. Tesu was completely baffled. He didn't know if these monsters were specifically targeting Doma's regenerative body or if they were trying to split up the team's strength once again. Suryan and Himo told the hunter Tesu not to worry and to go save Doma. They would handle the monster horde here. Tesu told them to be careful and then left to find Doma. Nava smirked contemptuously and rose from her throne. She figured the strongest warrior of the hunter party had already left. She would deal with the rest. Himo told Suryan to provide support. She would take the woman down. Doma was sent flying but finally came to a stop. Nava's subordinate was still hot on his heels. The creature swung its fist at him once again, but this time Doma raised his arm to block it. The creature let out a surprised, "Oh!" Not expecting him to be able to parry its blow. Doma gritted his teeth and shoved the monster's hand away. He said his regeneration skill was like a lizard's tail, not some cheap party trick. In no time, Tesu caught up. He threw a punch toward the monster, but it simply tilted its head and dodged. He said he wanted to end this quickly because he was not in a good mood. In that moment, Nava's subordinate deduced the nature of Tesu's power. The creature realized his attacks were based on inducing headaches. It then aimed to launch a mental attack. The monster showed no fear at all. It commented that Tesu's skill was quite impressive. But it wasn't nearly enough to break its horn. The monster activated the circlet on its head, pulling a longsword from it. Tesu realized this was no ordinary monster from a low-rank gate. This was a being that had undergone an awakening. Tesu said he needed time to activate his Duoxini Holy Possession skill, so he needed Doma to protect him. That was all the prompting Doma needed. He activated his own power, ready to fight for his guildmate. However, the monster directly ignored him, brushing past Doma and raising its sword toward Tesu. Even though Doma quickly blocked the monster's sword, it still managed to slice off Tesu's left arm. Doma swung a punch, forcing the monster to leap back. Tesu's severed arm regenerated in an instant. The monster burst out in gleeful laughter. It couldn't believe it had encountered two individuals with regenerative bodies. Doma charged toward the monster with his sword. The creature swung its own sword, cleanly slicing off his leg. Doma gritted his teeth. He had used over 100% of his strength, yet his bones were still cut so easily. The monster intended to ignore Doma and focus on Tesu, but Doma's speed was too great. His leg had already healed, and he charged forward to attack again. No matter how many times the monster sliced him, his wounds healed in an instant, and he just kept coming. Doma threw a punch at the monster. It cut his arm off in a flash. Doma's arm grew back again. He continued to press forward. The monster ducked to evade, then swung its sword to send Doma flying. He raised his own sword to block, so his body was only thrown back. Rarely for this fight, he was completely unharmed. Doma stood up, tore off his shirt, and prepared to fight again with burning enthusiasm. The monster smirked provocatively at him, daring him to try. Doma rushed toward the monster. It swung its sword, lopping off his arm. Doma quickly regenerated his arm and a new weapon to counterattack, but he was getting furious. His attacks felt as effective as a mosquito bite against this monster. The creature blocked his punch with one hand, then kicked him a good 8 meters away. Doma was panting like an ox, but he still taunted the creature to bring it on, claiming he couldn't be killed. The monster knew perfectly well how to defeat Doma. It just needed to dice him into tiny pieces, preventing the system from initiating his regeneration and causing his consciousness to fade. No matter how strong a person was, that would be the end. The monster swung its sword horizontally across his torso. It was too fast for Doma to raise his sword in defense. He was continuously slashed by the monster all over his body. Realizing he was about to be minced, he tried a different tactic. Doma threw his sword at the monster and then made a run for it. Doma flashed behind the dungeon monster, locking its neck from the rear. He took a deep breath and screamed into its ear, but the monster tore off Doma's arm. He quickly regenerated his arm using a powerful skill, kept his hold on the monster's neck, and started punching. The monster struggled but couldn't break free. Doma burst into maniacal laughter. He threatened the beast, holding a hand before its face, intending to take the monster's eye. The creature yelled and squeezed its eyes shut. The monster slammed its back into the dungeon's stone wall. It smashed itself from side to side, but Doma still wouldn't let go. But then one of his arms fell off. The monster, not noticing, turned and got punched square in the face. The creature rolled a few times on the ground. The beast realized this hunter was completely insane. While it was still wrestling with Doma, Tesu had already finished his own fight on the other side. The monster suddenly remembered him and charged desperately toward Tesu. It couldn't let him live any longer, he was too dangerous. The creature swung its sword toward Tesu, and Doma leaped to intercept. But it was too late. Tesu's awakening had transformed him into someone with ridiculously long hair. The moment he opened his eyes, both Doma and the monster collapsed to the ground, clutching their heads and crying out in pain. Tesu stepped closer to the writhing creature. He raised his hand and then clenched his fist. The monster that was screaming 1 second was a motionless heap the next. Inside Tesu's mind, the divine entity linked to his system chastised him for using all its power just to handle that one monster. The entity declared it would take his head in exchange for the use of its full power. Tesu agreed, and his head exploded only to be replaced by a new one. He sat up wearily, rubbing his new head. Doma couldn't even process what had just occurred. Tesu turned back to give him a brief explanation. Because he had used all his power, his head was the sacrifice, but he couldn't die because the divine being in his system despised him. Tesu stood up and called for the dazed Doma to regroup. The young hunter was still in complete shock. Tesu lost his head, but was perfectly fine. Meanwhile, his own head couldn't regenerate, which was absolutely insane. Doma chased after Tesu, demanding answers. Wasn't the head the ultimate weak point for those with a regeneration skill? How could it heal? Tesu said he didn't fully understand his own regenerative body either, but confirmed his head was not his weak point. Doma pressed him with more questions, but Tesu didn't want to answer. He said he'd tell him after they completed their mission to clear this gate. Over with Suryan and Himo, the two hunters were facing the old crone Nava. After a brief exchange, Suryan was already panting and required healing from Himo. Nava just stood there smugly with her hands on her hips, though she was getting tired of attacking Himo to use her healing skill and restore him to his original state. Suryan got up and shot his blood at a monster lying nearby. He wanted to end this quickly and not waste any more time. Himo asked if he could still use his blood skill. He had already used it quite a lot. Suryan said it was fine, telling Himo to just keep fighting and support him from behind. As long as he focused on defense, he could protect her. Himo activated level 5 of her Holy Power Control, a unique ability from her system. The spear she held changed slightly. Nava found it strange how could holy power be channeled into a dead object. Himo charged forward with her spear. She was furious that Nava would speak of her weapon that way. Her weapon was crafted from the heart of a special tree. It was not a dead object. Their guild would never use such a thing. Nava cackled loudly. She held out her hand, and the creature on her arm spat out a black ring which formed a shield. She raised the shield to block Himo's spear. She was incredibly smug, knowing that no matter how hard Himo tried, she could never pierce this dragon shield of hers. The ring on Nava's head also began to drip a liquid. Tattoos spread across her body as she casually plucked a plume from behind her. It transformed into a massive sword. She charged forward to attack Himo, who swung her spear to block the blade's path. Nava looked down on her with smug contempt. Himo slammed the butt of his spear into the monster, knocking her back to create distance. Nava leaped up, clicked her tongue, and continuously unleashed a skill that fired feather quills of light, but her feathers were blocked by sun. Seizing the opening while the creature was distracted, the hunter Sujan swung his spear down on her from above. She was slammed to the ground. Himo immediately unleashed another attack straight down, but Nava raised her shield to block the blow. Golden leaves from Himo's spear fell and scattered around them. Nava was gloating, confident her shield was impenetrable when Himo began thrusting his spear at her relentlessly. The scattered golden leaves swirled around Nava, and she finally realized something was terribly wrong with this strange attack. Instantly, thick vines erupted from the leaves, ensnaring her. While Nava dodged the vines sprouting from the ground, Himo attacked from above with his spear. She ducked to evade it, and Sujan seized the opportunity, firing his blood magic to entrap her. Realizing the situation was turning sour, Nava spun rapidly, batting away the strange projectiles hurtling toward her. If any of those attacks hit her weak spot, it would be all over. Nava desperately clenched every muscle in her lower body to defend herself. Just as she breathed a sigh of relief for blocking everything, spikes of blood shot up from the ground. Nava leaned back to dodge only to see Himo descending on her from above. He swung his spear and she blocked with her shield, but it was clear Nava was on the defensive. The monster then resorted to another trick. Nava activated her deadwood weapon, aiming to slice through Himo's spear. He was forced to retreat as Nava's attack struck the ceiling, causing debris to rain down. Nava finally unleashed her true power. She swung her shield, firing a barrage of black blades toward the two of them, a skill worthy of a boss from a high-ranking gate. Just as the two were at a loss, Changgu returned. With a single sword stroke, he deflected all of Nava's dark blades. He told Sujan and Himo to fall back and join the main guild assault team, insisting they needed to end this quickly. Other hunters rushed in from outside. Changgu ordered them to find any survivors, declaring that he would handle this beast himself. Nava looked at him with contempt, clearly unimpressed. Changgu paid no mind to her taunts. He closed his eyes, focused for a moment, and then transformed. Changgu's entire body became covered in white fur, a power from his awakening. Meanwhile, Doma and Tesu were still racing back to their starting point. He was still lost in thought, wondering if a regenerating body truly had no weaknesses. As the two ran, he pondered if the system had any data on it. Suddenly, Tesu stopped. He pulled out the stone in his hand and held it up defensively, thinking he had encountered another monster from the dungeon. But to his surprise, it was a group from the backup team. After a quick greeting, Tesu resumed running for his life. He followed the trail, breathing a sigh of relief when he saw that Sujan and Himo were safe. Elsewhere, Changgu let out a roar and swung his blade at Nava. She used her old trick, raising her shield to block the attack. Then, she swung her shield again, launching a continuous volley of blades forward. But the blades didn't fly toward Changgu. Instead, they curved past him, heading for Sujan and Himo, who were behind him. Nava grinned slyly. Seeing Changgu turn his back, she lunged forward for a sucker punch. However, Changgu was no rookie. He smirked and swiftly swung his sword in a counterattack. If Nava hadn't raised her shield to cover her face in time, she would have been obliterated. She was sent flying, unable to believe what just happened. It was unbelievable. Meanwhile, Himo and Sujan were completely unscathed because Tesu had returned to protect them. Nava gritted her teeth at the sight of him. That meant her subordinate had been defeated. She had severely underestimated this hunter. Changgu watched Nava, sizing her up. Her shield was certainly interesting. It was rare for anything to block his attack. But he had noticed something crucial. Even if the shield could withstand the blows, Nava's arm could not. Changgu swung his sword, slashing down at her one last time. Nava's hand trembled as she raised her shield to defend again. Her arm was clearly messed up. She blocked the hunter's attack, but it felt like her bones would shatter. Changgu approached her, raised his sword, and told her to hold her shield tight. Then, with a powerful skill, he used his sword to send Nava's shield flying. Her arm went flying right along with it. She stared in disbelief, her jaw agape. She had been too confident in her weapon, completely unaware of her own strengths and weaknesses, as if she lacked a proper system. Changgu swung his sword and plunged it straight into Nava's chest. She coughed up blood and died collapsing in a heap on the dungeon floor. The support team returned to report they had scoured the area and found no one else. They did find a few stray monster creatures and had already eliminated them. Tesu told them to return, that they didn't need to follow him any further. Nava, on the verge of death, was still sputtering and coughing weakly. She still had the strength to laugh maniacally. She claimed everything was going according to her plan. Even if she died, she would at least drag every hunter here down with her. Changgu couldn't understand what she was muttering about. From a distance, Tesu called for him to return. Suddenly, Changgu's attention was drawn to a hole in the wall. He yelled a warning, "Everyone, get away from that gate!" A powerful monster stepped out from the opening. The figure stepped out with a smirk, announcing he was here to settle a debt. He looked at the group of hunters but showed no sign of fear. He told them to surrender quickly if they wanted to live. Changgu unleashed a slash toward the monster. The attack missed him instead, carving a long gash into the floor. Changgu seemed to recognize this monster. It was Ban. He told the monster to get lost if it knew what was good for it. Ban's full name was Ban the Voracious Devourer. He didn't come alone. He brought an army with him. He gave Changgu a challenging look. What should he do now? Changgu's expression hardened. He had no intention of standing down. Ban smirked contemptuously. He raised his hand and the entire dungeon began to tremble violently. Chang-gu yelled for the others to fall back. He would handle Ban himself. Tesu disagreed. If Chang-gu intended to fight him one-on-one, then he had to intervene perhaps with support from their guild. Besides Ban, there was another figure whose face was completely concealed. Tesu ordered the hunters behind him to hold their positions. Chang-gu told Ban to scram. If they fought here, it would cause a lot of trouble. Ban's face was a mask of pure contempt. He didn't believe Chang-gu could even touch him with that six-tailed sword. Chang-gu's expression grew tense, looking like he was about to lunge at any moment. Ban took a deep breath and then burst out laughing. Something seemed to strike him as funny, and he suddenly changed his mind, deciding not to fight today. Ban ordered his subordinate to open a gate so they could leave. The subordinate performed some kind of ritual, and the dungeon began to crumble. He walked smugly into the portal and vanished. The ground inside the cavern began to crack and fall apart, throwing the group into chaos. Chang-gu said, "Tesu, you handle things here. I'm going down to check it out." Tesu turned and gave Suryan a signal. Himo, being afraid of blood, quickly jumped onto Tesu's back for safety. Suryan took a deep breath, then pulled on Tesu's arm to draw blood. A river of blood flowed out, enveloping everyone in a protective barrier. Outside this barrier, Chang-gu drew his sword and repeatedly thrust it upward. This must be a powerful... He shattered the ceiling, creating an escape route for everyone. After it was done, Chang-gu reverted to his normal state. He let out a sigh of relief. The job was finished. The rest of the guild members were also brought up safely by Suryan. The moment they landed on solid ground, Suryan collapsed from exhaustion. He had lost too much blood today and felt dizzy. Himo, still on Tesu's back, raised her hand and said she would heal him back to perfect health. Chang-gu also coughed up a mouthful of blood. Himo went over to heal him as well. Himo suddenly noticed Nava's snake slithering into a corner trying to escape. She shouted, drawing everyone's attention to it. The snake flinched in surprise and bumped right into Doma's leg. The obedient snake coiled around his leg, acting cute and showing off all its charm. But unfortunately, it had flattered too many people. Doma, a no-nonsense hunter, didn't hesitate to raise his foot and stomp it flat. He was so shocked he felt like throwing up. The chaotic mess of earth and rock outside caused by Chang-gu made everyone click their tongues in disapproval, a scene worse than any dungeon raid aftermath. Doma was extremely impatient at this moment. He wanted to know the physical weakness of that regeneration skill. Okay, since Doma wanted to know, Tesu didn't hide it. The body's weak point is the area from the spine to the head. Like I said, it doesn't matter if the head explodes or is cut off. However, it depends on where the wound is inflicted. This means if someone attacks you anywhere from the spine to the head, you won't be able to regenerate at all. Doma was utterly bewildered, wondering how Tesu knew about this. Turns out, Tesu had once dealt with a guy who could regenerate his body. When his lower body was severed, he was paralyzed and couldn't move. I slit his throat to take his life, but that monster just kept regenerating. I could only finish him by striking his head. That's why he had abandoned his weapon. Tesu guessed that maybe Doma's parents also had regenerative bodies, or perhaps they were just normal people. Tesu also revealed that perhaps the true nature of each person's awakening is different, which surprised Doma once again. That's all for today. Tesu quickly said goodbye to Doma and went elsewhere. At the Hunter Guild headquarters a few days later, Doma was banging on Tesu's door first thing in the morning like a debt collector, which pissed Tesu right off. Doma was eager to hear the rest of the story Tesu had started telling yesterday. He wanted to know more about the true power inside his body, the one granted by the system. Tesu was at a loss for words. He could only wearily lead Doma inside. Our true power is strength itself. How long do you think it takes for someone to channel power into their body, huh? 10 seconds or 20 seconds? Usually it's just a matter of time until we can control the power within our bodies. That's why we can fight with our full power for short periods. We would also need to conserve energy and use just enough on our opponents, but we don't have to do that. Even if our lungs explode from lack of breath, even if our hearts can't withstand the immense shock and power, we can still regenerate them. But fatigue will still affect our bodies. This means we can only force ourselves to increase our power just enough to be able to regenerate. Tesu went on and on. Doma couldn't wrap his head around how a tired person could possibly fight with their full strength. After explaining forever to someone who just wasn't getting it, an annoyed Taesu pointed towards the treadmill on the other side of the room. He told Doma to get over there and run. Doma sighed and stepped onto the treadmill, Taesu's voice still echoing behind him. Don't just run, you have to run with everything you've got. While you're running, you have to think that you're completely exhausted. And that is why the body needs power. This means Doma first needs to control his mind, then run with all his might and completely ignore every reaction his body produces. Easier said than done. Doma clenched his jaw and pumped his legs, pounding the treadmill like a jackhammer and running like his life depended on it. Taesu sat to the side a little freaked out because Doma had been running non-stop for 1 hour already, and he still looked incredibly comfortable. It looked like Taesu had underestimated Doma's capabilities. While Doma was running like a madman, Taesu opened the door to leave, telling him he had to keep running until he returned. Meeting Chu outside, Taesu mentioned the Doma. Doma was a guy with a lot of potential, the kind of raw talent needed to conquer any gate that appeared. Taesu felt that running was one of the fundamental basics for any hunter. The more you run, the more your body changes. Taesu lightly patted Chonggu's shoulder, wanting to know if he planned to teach Doma a new sword skill. Who knows? Maybe he'll choose a sword over that strange arm he got after his awakening, Taesu said, turning away. Chonggu didn't seem to think so, giving a faint, forced smile. Inside the training room, Doma was still running for his life, following the relentless training system. Chonggu took this opportunity to give Taesu some bad news. The entire operation of the elite guild fleet had been postponed. But for Taesu, this seemed like good news as he looked visibly excited, suddenly bolting forward as if racing to a new dungeon. While running, he was grabbed by an overly friendly old man from a room, causing Taesu to yelp in surprise. Doma's life recently felt like a repetitive system: run, sleep, and eat. This cycle repeated day after day, tedious and tough. Therefore, Chonggu would occasionally visit Doma and tell him news about the new guild. Master Chonggu was a part of the Advanced Hunter Division, while the Protection Corps was assigned to defensive operations. When a new guild was formed to search for supply routes originating from a recently discovered gate, Taesu had to participate even though he was known for running away at the first opportunity. Taesu was made the captain of the new guild. Chonggu said that after being assigned the mission, Taesu became a symbol for every top-tier hunter in the world. Very soon after, they began searching every possible location along the guild's supply route. They found 7 routes in total. To prevent a monster backlash, they began to infiltrate those paths. But, as expected, there were no signs of humans on the guild's supply route. The only thing that welcomed them was a horde of monster creatures. The entire party continued to search until the end of the route. In the end, all 7 of the routes were blocked, and they could no longer continue their search. The hunter team had to retreat without any concrete results. They intentionally blocked the paths with rubble so no one could return or use them again. The party returned and then continued to search the remaining supply routes. The number of potential locations gradually decreased due to the prolonged search. Additionally, that other guild reduced its territory and built a new barrier to prevent the old story from repeating. And by the time everything was over, Doma had become a famous figure for running all day long. Doma chugged water, his whole body drenched in sweat from pushing past his limits. Doma, you have to rest for a bit. If you keep running for your life like this, you'll meet your maker sooner or later. The other hunter trainees passing by were extremely surprised to see Doma walking for the first time. Taesu saw Doma had changed clothes and was surprised, guessing he must have reached his goal. Ah well, that has become normal for me. I can endure any difficult situation now. But, Sir Taesu, why do you look so annoyed? Doma asked with a frown. Taesu wasn't annoyed at all. On the contrary, he was very happy because the guild manager had given him a long vacation. Taesu kept whispering teasingly in Doma's ear, making him slightly irritated. After the live wire, Taesu left. Doma went to find Chonggu, who was standing dazedly by a cliff. Chonggu liked to come here whenever he had a day off because the place made him feel at ease. The master and student stood watching the sunset for a long time. Master, can I ask you for a favor? I want to learn a swordsmanship skill. Chonggu was a bit surprised but smirked in response. Swordsmanship, you say? Fine. But where is your weapon? Wouldn't it be difficult without a sword? I have an idea I thought a lot while training and came up with many new concepts. One of them will be my weapon. Just give me 1 week and I will choose my weapon. Doma replied with confidence. Jong-gu praised the boy's bold, can-do attitude. He then pointed to the river in front of them for Doma and said, "If you follow that river, you'll find a very high mountain. I will teach you swordsmanship there for 1 week, the kind you'll need inside a dungeon." Hearing this, Doma was incredibly excited and promised to prepare thoroughly. 1 week later, Doma was ready at the crack of dawn, having prepared a pile of bloody human hands. His entire body was in a ready stance, waiting for Jong-gu to arrive. Jong-gu looked at the mountain-like pile of hands at Doma's feet and was at a loss for words. Since Doma could only control his divine energy in his hands, he planned to use that flow of power to create a sword through his arm, a unique skill from his awakening. Seeing that Jong-gu didn't believe him, Doma immediately rolled up his sleeves, let out a yell, and jumped down. He intended to turn this place into a mountain of hands to truly impress Jong-gu. Doma quickly snapped his own wrist to release his divine energy. He had injected enough power to create bone, and then used that energy to form it into the shape of a sword. It was unreal. Just like that, Doma had created a massive giant sword from his own bone. Jong-gu's jaw dropped when he saw that Doma could truly control the flow of energy within his body. Before teaching Doma swordsmanship, Jong-gu wanted them to move somewhere else immediately. The place piled high with Doma's hands was seriously making Jong-gu sick to his stomach. Once they reached a suitable place to learn swordsmanship, Jong-gu began to teach Doma the first steps to becoming a powerful hunter. The first thing you need to do is release your divine energy. I'll show you how it works, so just follow my lead. First, channel your divine energy through the sword, but you can't force too much at once, so you must focus on pushing the energy beyond your body's limits, almost like a system override. Then the flow will pour out easily, just like you did before. Jong-gu instructed while giving a powerful live demonstration, leaving Doma in awe. He immediately imitated Jong-gu, channeling divine energy through his sword. A stream of power immediately crackled to life. Very good. However, in that state it doesn't have enough power. That's because it's too dispersed. Instead, you need to concentrate the power at the tip of the sword. You need to focus on the energy you want to release into the sword and then channel it to the tip as fast as possible. This is the key to the skill. As he spoke, Jong-gu launched a series of explosive strikes into the cliff face to demonstrate. Doma watched with his jaw dropped, then tried to focus and imitate what Jong-gu had just done. With a loud boom, the cliff face in front of him was shattered by the force of Doma's attack. Doma was absolutely ecstatic. He had successfully acquired a special skill, the kind a top guild would recruit for. What he had done so far was just Jong-gu then demonstrated another example. After channeling the divine energy to the tip of his sword, Jong-gu quickly released it from the sword and an immense force instantly erupted, creating a massive, heaven-shaking explosion capable of destroying any monster. You could call it an explosion of divine energy. After gathering the divine energy, release it as quickly as possible to create an explosion. And to make that energy even stronger, it will feel like its power has doubled. Jong-gu spoke as he spun and launched a strike, a move powerful enough to clear a high-rank gate, which made Doma's eyes widen in admiration. Even if it's the same skill, each has a different effect and the amount of damage dealt will vary depending on the sharpness of the energy. The sharper you make the energy, the more perfect your technique will become, Jong-gu explained like a true hunter. Doma considered using his energy to shape a bone into a sword, a unique skill he was developing, and after a few minutes of thought he immediately began to practice. The Monster King on this side was quite annoyed to learn that humans were shrinking its territory by erecting defensive barriers likely protecting the area around it. However, he was thrilled by the news that the fruit of the encased seed had finally opened after 300 years, promising a powerful new monster. Their day of judgment is fast approaching. Meanwhile, Doma kept failing despite his efforts to condense his holy energy and release it in an explosion, a complex new skill. The challenge here is that I have to control the holy energy and then detonate it, a task his internal system made incredibly difficult. I thought it would be simple since I created the sword so easily after my awakening. I just made the energy flow sharper through the bone. But there's a huge difference between sharpening the flow and making it explode. I think mastering this skill will be even harder than when I first learned to channel energy. But it's a completely arduous challenge for me. Doma thought to himself, clutching his head like a rookie hunter facing an S-rank dungeon. Jong-gu's voice called from a distance for him to take a break for breakfast, but Doma stubbornly refused to stop. "There's no need to rush," he said. "If you succeed, you'll blow up this entire hill," Jong-gu added. This comment left Doma, a still-developing hunter, quite confused. Practicing endlessly without success made Doma so frustrated he wanted to curse. His attack was linked to his power, but the resulting slash from his skill was still far too shallow. Something seems off. Chong-gu observed from a distance, amazed at how quickly Doma was learning a trait prized by every hunter guild. The way he's pushing himself past his limits, I can see he's trying desperately. He's on the verge of the next stage of his awakening. Chong-gu thought to himself that after a meal that barely filled their stomachs, the two resumed their training. The bone sword Doma's skill created that morning had started to rot and stink terribly, forcing him to discard it. Chong-gu then handed Doma a wooden sword and proposed to spar. Doma thought he had misheard, his eyes wide with shock as he stammered, speechless at the thought of fighting a seasoned hunter. Seeing that Chong-gu was serious, Doma eagerly grabbed the sword and charged in, but strangely he couldn't land a single hit. Chong-gu moved with incredible agility, dodging like a squirrel and using the openings to land several excruciatingly painful blows on Doma's head. Doma swung his sword furiously, but he fundamentally couldn't touch a single hair on Chong-gu, who kept targeting his head with relentless strikes. Burning with rage, Doma resolved to fight back with all his might once more. Thanks to his undying determination, he gradually began to counter Chong-gu's attacks as he became more vigorous by the moment, his swordsmanship skill growing more proficient with every exchange, leaving Chong-gu quite satisfied with his potential as a future guild member. From then on, Doma's routine, as if dictated by a training system, was to destroy the hills in the area with his holy energy every morning. Then he would spar with Chong-gu in the afternoon. After several months of this arduous training, Doma had reached a level of power where he could fight his master on his own terms. The two were now evenly matched, a true hunter versus his mentor. They could finally have a proper one-on-one duel. That afternoon, Chong-gu suggested Doma rest for a bit before they left this place to find a gate. Doma felt a bit regretful about having to leave before clearing all the hills. So, while Chong-gu rested, he went to destroy a few more, treating it like a final dungeon run. Doma's stubbornness left Chong-gu at a loss. That night, a horde of monster creatures trying to attack the city wall was intercepted by a squad of demon hunter specialists. However, this level of force was only enough to tickle the creatures and stood no chance of actually stopping the monster wave from the gate. The city wall began to crack under the assault, and the ever-growing horde of monsters from the gate sent the hunters into a panic. Fortunately, just in time, two powerful energy blasts from Chong and Doma's positions shot out, using a powerful skill to decimate them. In the blink of an eye, Doma unleashed his power and flawlessly annihilated the pack of monsters, splattering them everywhere. The other hunters saw Doma's incredible skill and looked at each other in utter disbelief. Ju charged forward for a direct assault. Doma charged to the opposite side to handle the monsters, his battle lust at its peak. In the pitch-black forest, Ju was running at full speed, chasing after the monsters, all while feeling something was wrong. If their goal was to breach the defenses, they would have sent an awakening-class monster by now. But why haven't I seen a single one? Ju wondered. One-eyed monster. Tall, dark, and ferocious, lunged to grab Ju. You picked the wrong guy, pal. Ju swung his sword in one powerful arc, sending the monster's head flying one way, and its body the other. I know a statue-like monster could shatter the wall, but are there really only these statue-like monsters here? Ju wondered, confused. Meanwhile, on Doma's side, he was putting the powerful skill that Chong had taught him into practice. The sheer thrill of the fight made Doma feel incredibly exhilarated. He had realized the true power of his regeneration skill. Using it in a real battle was ridiculously convenient. The hunters watching from a distance saw Doma's power and couldn't stop whispering amongst themselves. He's not just releasing a massive amount of holy energy, it's also much more refined. It's been a while, but he's clearly gotten much stronger. Maybe his system gave him an upgrade. The man in red praised Doma admiringly. Ra'an, the one with the wavy hair, was on the contrary seething with jealousy toward Doma. He impulsively jumped down, running his mouth about how he'd prove his skill set was far superior to Doma's. So while Doma was busy cutting down the monsters, Ra'an descended from above, unleashing a lightning skill, scorching the creatures until they were charcoal black. That's how a real hunter deals with them, instead of just wildly swinging a weapon like you. It's best to finish them in a single blow, he said with a boastful laugh. The monsters behind him suddenly began to stir and get back up, regenerating to their original state, which made him look a little foolish. Hello? You call that destroyed? You call that dealt with? Doma was dying of laughter on the side, not giving a damn about that idiot Ron and just continuing to slash through the monsters one after another like a butcher. We'll see who's the real big shot in the end. Ron, with his legendary Never Say Die spirit, once again fired a level 7 control beam skill, brimming with killing intent. His magical blast caused the ground to crumble and trees to topple as if a Category 11 hurricane had just swept through. Amidst that chaotic scene, Ron kept unleashing thunderous blasts that shook the very earth, forcing Doma to cover his ears from the noise. Why is he aiming at the ground instead of the horde of monsters? Doma was at a complete loss for words, standing there like a statue as the guy threw his tantrum. The man in red was also blinded from afar by the sheer magical power his friend was generating, a unique power taught by their so embarrassed he couldn't even look up. But Ron, completely carried away, just kept frantically attacking the ground until no one could stop him. By the time he was exhausted, not only the monsters but the entire surrounding landscape had been completely obliterated. The man in red, Dong-suk, rushed over to his walking disaster of a friend and cheerfully greeted Chong. Seeing that Ju was worried about the wall, Dong-suk quickly reassured him that he had reinforced the area around it, protecting the dungeon entrance so no one would be in danger. Doma currently had dark circles under his eyes like a panda from lack of sleep. Dong-wook suggested taking the master and disciple duo, Chong-gu and Doma, to a nearby place to rest. This Dong-wook fellow was certainly much kinder than his own troublemaking. Deep in the forest, a group of hunters were secretly lying in wait. They were gathering intel while sending someone back to the guild headquarters to report that a horde of monsters was rapidly gathering in one location. The hunter team leaped down from the trees, each splitting off in a different direction to act. Unexpectedly, in an instant, Dui Hyuk was struck through the chest by a magic blast and collapsed on the spot. The two remaining hunters anxiously rushed over to check on the situation. This magical power was so strong it shattered the holy energy-infused sword of the female hunter in the group. It was truly beyond imagination. The gray-haired hunter unfortunately met the same tragic end as his friend, leaving only the female hunter alive. But her fate was no luckier, as she was ultimately executed on the spot by a monster riding Bera's bloodsteed, silencing her about tonight's events. Under the decisive crack of gunfire, no life could hold on any longer. The next morning, Doma was in a state of extreme boredom from having to rest. Doma looked so bored he was about to go stir-crazy. Seeing Doma so idle, Chong-gu suggested a test of his combat power. To put it simply, it's just a test of your strength, a power check to see what level you're at. Besides, you've been with me almost this entire time since your awakening. So let's see how you fight without me. Although Doma agreed, he hesitated slightly because he didn't want to act without Chong-gu. Encouraged by Chong-gu, Doma finally regained his confidence and promised to do his best. 1 hour later, Doma arrived at the power evaluation site. After a few hours of waiting for the other prospects to show their skills, it was finally Doma's turn. The moment the examiner saw him, he guessed that Doma seemed very experienced in combat, eagerly wondering if he could shatter the stone block. The examiner's jaws dropped when they learned Doma had no specific skill and only imperfect control according to the system. If you have imperfect control, you will experience immense pain during combat. Do you think we're joking? You should know that the pain will intensify the more you move, and you'll lose a lot of energy. Someone with such control would typically only be a mid-ranker at best. It's a huge issue whether you can overcome it or not. This kid. The examiner coughed, losing his composure and shouting at Doma. Indeed, imperfect control is extremely painful, but if you're skilled enough, you can completely manage the pain. So what's the problem? Doma's stubborn reply made the examiners furious. And being called an idiot by Doma made the old examiner so mad he looked like he was about to have a heart attack on the spot. After realizing Doma was only swearing an oath to summon his holy power, the examiner begrudgingly allowed Doma to demonstrate his ability. Before the wide, staring eyes of the observers, Doma suddenly broke his own arm, shaping it into a sword which shocked everyone to their core. Doma swung the sword, channeling his holy energy to its maximum, and unleashed a powerful strike that cracked the entire floor into pieces. The space itself trembled continuously. That power of Doma's successfully shattered the stone block to the amazement of the crowd, as if he had just shattered the gate to a dungeon. Only after reducing the entire area to a desolate ruin like the aftermath of a dungeon break did Damon finally stop. The examiner later approached Master Chu Damon's teacher, endlessly praising the overwhelming power from his recent awakening and his unique skill. Master Chu humbly explained that he initially accepted Damon as a student because of the boy's intense hatred for every monster that comes through a tag gate. But now I truly see his potential. I believe that training a student who could become a top-tier Ada hunter is the ultimate. That hatred can be easily channeled into power. Besides, you've done an excellent job guiding such a spirit, especially if his war system helps him focus that rage. Continue to guide him well, and let his future success bring you great honor. The examiner cheerfully patted Master Chu on the shoulder as he spoke. After the competition, Damon's reputation spread like wildfire. Everyone was buzzing about his ability to form a sword with his bare hand and his audacity to talk back to an examiner. All the whispers about Damon were making his peers incredibly jealous. Just then, they happened to run into Leo and Sean. The pair hurried over to greet Damon, making Ryan even more jealous that Damon seemed to know everyone. At the mention of a sparring match, Ryan imagined Damon lying defeated at his feet and let out a cocky laugh, aggressively challenging him to a duel. Leo also wanted in, so Ryan decided on a 2-on-2 brawl. But Jax was hesitant, remembering how they weren't allowed proper recovery time during their last all-dungeon. The fight was set to proceed under the rule that control-type abilities were permitted. However, using the full power of their awakening was forbidden, and only training weapons were allowed. The match would last a maximum of 10 minutes with Sean as the referee. Ryan just stood there bragging, which was so infuriating that Damon just wanted to rush in and shut him up. Damon selected a training weapon to use. The moment he channeled energy from his Qin system into it, the weapon instantly swelled up like a balloon. You're not supposed to combine it with that kind of energy. It's a training weapon, so it has a built-in, non-damaging feature. When you force that much power into it, it swells up and bypasses that safety feature, becoming incredibly dangerous. You have to maintain a very specific amount of energy to keep it from swelling up, Leo quickly reminded Damon. Damon decided to just use a wooden sword to be safe, since it couldn't be infused with his power. After the weapons were chosen, the two teams, Damon and Leo on one side and Ryan and Jax on the other, got into ready position. After the signal, both sides rushed each other in a chaotic clash, with neither team willing to back down. Ryan had planned to take on Damon while leaving Leo for Jax, but unexpectedly Damon and Leo switched opponents mid-charge, leaving the other two stunned for a few seconds. It turned out Leo had already arranged a plan with Damon to switch targets on his signal. Ryan was determined to chase after Damon, but his speed was so great that he couldn't stop in time and ended up crashing right into his own teammate Jax. Refusing to give up, the two furiously charged again, only to be completely overwhelmed and knocked to the ground by Damon and Leo. Fuming and cursing, Ryan stubbornly got back up with Jax, both of them determined to press forward and not give up. The two of them seemed to get a second wind, their fighting spirit flaring up intensely. Seeing how tightly the two were coordinating, Damon devised a new strategy. Focus all their attacks on one of them to break their teamwork. Leo thought Damon's plan was brilliant, and immediately got into position to execute it. The two teams clashed again in a relentless flurry of attacks, making Sean, who was watching from the sidelines, gape in awe. Ryan closed in on Damon, intending to strike him with his staff, but Damon managed to block the attack in time with his own impressive staff skills. Over here, Himo and Dongsuk were still locked in a fierce battle. While dodging Himo's relentless barrage, Dongsuk knew he had to counter her weaponized skill, but just as Dongsuk thought he had finally caught it, Himo cleverly swung it aside, making Dongsuk miss completely. Her fighting style was a confusing mix of feints and attacks, forcing him to run himself ragged to avoid her club of weapons. Meanwhile, as the hunter named Ran was holding his own against Doma, Himo suddenly charged Ran from behind, stunning him at being ganged up on. What the hell? Why are you two ganging up on me? Ran yelled in frustration, but Doma didn't reply, busy launching a sneak attack of his own from the rear at that very moment. Dongsuk managed to charge in and block the attack meant for Ran. He then counterattacked Doma while trying to fend off Himo, who was zipping around them. He was getting completely exhausted. First Himo and then Doma relentlessly targeted Ran. Finally fed up, Ran put all his strength into one punch and sent Doma flying. Done playing games. Doma got serious. He immediately channeled his sacred energy into his staff, causing it to expand as he prepared to smash Ran right in the face, a powerful skill he rarely used. But it was useless. It seemed any power imbued with hostile intent was nullified perhaps by a passive skill. Ran possessed that interfered with the system. The mocking smile on Ran's face barely had time to form before it froze as Himo brought her club crashing down on him from above. Himo's club landed a clean hit right on Ran's face, sending him sprawling onto the stone floor. Dong-suk, who was nearby, quickly met the same fate at Himo's hands. Doma could only watch in stunned silence for a moment. Then, remembering he was supposed to be the strongest hunter here, he charged back into the chaotic brawl to assist Himo. Swan, who was observing the chaos from the sidelines, suddenly heard a voice next to him. "When you have downtime, you should be resting. Why are you all involved in this nonsense?" In the training yard, Dong-suk managed to trip Doma, sending him falling backward onto the ground. Ran gleefully seized the opportunity, swinging his club down for a finishing blow, but he missed again. Suwon had moved in a flash to pull Doma out of the way. Furious at being denied his victory, Ran was fuming at Suwon for interfering. When Suwon suggested they call off the fight, both Doma and Ran flatly refused. The two were getting worked up again, about to lunge at each other, when the arrival of Taesu stopped them in their tracks. "The guild has a mission for hotheads like you, so stop this now," Taesu said coldly. Upon seeing Taesu, the entire group immediately snapped to attention and greeted him. All traces of their earlier aggression vanished without a trace. "This is an urgent investigation. The party will consist of the 5 of you," Taesu added. When they immediately started arguing over who would be leader, Taesu's voice grew stern. "Anyone who argues over the position will be disqualified," which left them all speechless. Taesu then appointed Suwon as the leader precisely because he dislikes fighting. Hearing this, Doma and Ran reluctantly agreed, and the tension finally subsided. Taesu then pulled Suwon aside to brief him on the mission. Before leaving, he reminded the group one last time not to fight among themselves. Suwon felt a bit anxious. He hoped this mission wouldn't be anything too difficult or out of the ordinary, not like the last dungeon break. "We've already lost contact with 2 hunter teams along that route. The point of last contact is getting closer to our position. Judging by their speed, that monster horde seems larger than usual," Taesu explained. He wanted the team to investigate what was happening near the gate. After laying out the route, Taesu entrusted the entire operation to Suwon. The next morning, Doma said his goodbyes and departed early for the mission. Ran saw the close bond between the master and his student and burst out laughing mockingly, but Doma didn't give a damn. Xian, along with Jong and Himo, had also arrived. As the leader of this hunter party, Xian demanded everyone be silent and follow his orders. Doma and Ran kept bickering, making the atmosphere quite noisy, but with everyone finally gathered, the entire group eagerly set off. The horde of monster creatures in the forest had already formed 7 units, preparing to advance before dawn on the darkest night. The monster named Barris, after advancing deep into the territory, handed over command, entrusting the task of slowly advancing and breaking the humans' defensive wall to his blue monster subordinate. Xian's team was rushing into the forest when a flash of lightning lit up the sky. Ran spotted a group of monster creatures in that direction about 30 minutes away. Hearing that their numbers were less than 100 by, Xian was still uncertain if this was the monster horde they were searching for. But he was hesitant to strike immediately. "What we need is to figure out if a gate is nearby. Let's continue observing until nightfall and decide our next move then," Xian suggested. Late that night, the team forewent sleep, hiding among the tree branches to secretly observe the monster pack. But they still couldn't detect anything out of the ordinary. Doma and Jong grew impatient, wondering why they didn't just attack, but Xian argued that this monster was not to be underestimated since 2 other units had already been defeated. Waiting was proving fruitless. Xian decided to take a gamble and attempt to take them down. Doma and Ran promised to provide backup to defeat the monster horde. "If there is a powerful monster, my skill alone won't be enough, and we will have to focus on defeating it. If this mission becomes too dangerous, we will retreat," Xian said. The group quickly pulled back to prepare for the impending battle. Xian then approached Doma, saying he had a favor to ask. Xian wanted to borrow Doma's blood mass. Doma's blob of blood flowed all the way to where the monster creatures were sleeping. "Tearing up the surrounding earth, rocks, and trees, I need to target their weak points. If I'm lucky, my newly acquired skill will inflict a fatal wound on the stronger monster types," Xian thought as tendrils of blood under his control shot into the monster pack like thorny vines, wiping them out in an instant. The rest of the team seized the opportunity to rush in, and Doma, having fulfilled his role of supplying the blood, excitedly morphed his arm into a blade and joined his comrades in the fight. But who would have known? By the time the backup guild members arrived, the monster pack had already been completely wiped out. There was no need for them to even lift a finger. The monster Barris and his subordinate had advanced deep into the forest but hadn't encountered a single hunter due to the massive defensive wall. To lure the hunter teams out, Barris and his monster subordinate roared and stomped the ground thunderously. The noise agitated other nearby monsters who heard the call. They quickly rallied together, forming a massive-scale offensive force. Inside the walls, a dungeon break was imminent. 2 sleepy hunters on guard duty were jolted awake by the chaotic sounds from outside. Discovering that their request for aid had failed, they panicked and tried to call for reinforcements, but it was already too late. The sturdy wall suddenly erupted and collapsed, burying them both deep beneath the rubble. Barris was using a dark energy skill to simultaneously destroy the area and agitate. The monster horde charged forward, destroying everything in sight as a system alert warned of their chaotic advance. Each and every monster looked incredibly bloodthirsty. They impaled people, demolished buildings, and their shrieks turned the area into a living hell, just as they were reveling in the thrill of the hunt, enjoying their role as predators of humanity. A lone hunter appeared, crashing their party. The enraged monster horde gave chase only to be ambushed by other hunters who swooped in after their awakening to join the fray. Unexpectedly, in less than a second, the lead hunter was taken down by a level 2 awakened monster which ripped off his arm and drank his blood on the spot in agony. The remaining hunters were also surrounded, their faces turning pale with terror, and just like that, the entire party of hunters was brutally wiped out in a gruesome bloodbath. Suwon's group became incredibly frustrated upon learning that the other team had failed. They deduced that the monster horde, after dispatching the 2 hunter teams, continued on their original path to deliberately set a trap. Their goal was to attract their attention. Suwon let out a long, weary sigh. He knew this mission would not be easy. The Demon King, Ban in his lair, had received a report that Barris had breached the wall and that the new hunter team from a rival guild had. He immediately summoned Barbados for an audience. Bados, carrying a bloody monster head, tried to enter but was stopped by a minion for daring to appear before Lord Ban without a cloak. Ignoring the minion's nonsense, Bados couldn't care less and insolently strode inside, trailing blood. "I apologize for this sudden intrusion. I will continue his mission," Bados said, holding Barris's head. "Do you have any idea? I needed Barris as much as I need you, Bados." "So why did you kill him?" Ban asked with a glare. "He only possessed brute strength and no real skill. I am certain I can replace him, and as proof I kneel before you with his head without a single scratch on me," Bados stated confidently. This arrogant attitude greatly pleased Ban, who ultimately assigned the mission to him. Since Bados was nameless, Ban decided to christen him Zop. The monster horde that poured from the gate, emboldened by this, began to rampage throughout the city. And terrified sobs created a chaotic cacophony. Fresh blood flowed through every major street and narrow alley. Human bodies were piled up in rows waiting to enter the mouths of the monster horde. If you weren't careful on the streets, they'd tear your arm off for fun. The monsters were leisurely enjoying their human buffet when suddenly a sharp slicing sound echoed. In just the blink of an eye, all of their heads were severed from their necks and their bodies were sliced in half by an unknown force. It turned out that the teams of Chu and Taesu had arrived in the nick of time. They were somewhat disappointed that their view had been obstructed by the wall this entire time. Before Chu's eyes were all level 2 awakened monsters. They seemed to target any hunter they find while using civilians as bait. "Lead your squad and stop this monster horde. I will handle the ones that have undergone awakening. I really thought we could lure them to a single point to make the rescue mission simpler," John Gu said. Taesu immediately rushed forward, shouting to his squad, "Let's begin the assault and proceed with the rescue for the safety of the people." The monsters started to pursue them but were stopped by their commander. He ordered them to attack Chu first and continue the advance. Chu was slightly disappointed to hear this, as he really wanted to eliminate the ones chasing the other hunter teams. Upon hearing the command, the horde of monsters rushed in to swarm Chu, but he effortlessly scattered them. This is definitely going to be a long battle, like clearing a high-rank dungeon. I need to conserve my energy. My system is flashing a warning. I'll have to rely on my speed and this particular skill, Chu thought to himself while swinging his sword. The monsters relentlessly closed in on Chu, but his fierce whirlwind sword skill destroyed them all. After an intense and sweaty battle, only one ridiculously resilient monster remained standing, a true legend for its sheer tenacity. Upon seeing the sword Chu was wielding, it immediately recognized Chon-gu as the white fox its father had mentioned, and it began to laugh maniacally. So it is a named monster after all. And there are still level 2 awakened monster types lurking nearby. I bet I'll have to use my 7-branched sword skill. Joe thought nervously. I'll let you know my name is Ronov. I will bring your head back to Lord Ban. Ronov roared and charged right at Ju. Now the hunter could only rely on his 7-branched sword. Meanwhile, 2 half-demon monsters, Jope and Bane, were arguing loudly about what to do next. We will plant the seed to reclaim our honor after centuries. And to grow it, we need to excavate something as large as a mountain. Bane spoke up. Roth wondered if a project of that scale would attract the attention of the Hunter Guild, but Bastion immediately screamed in his face. That is precisely why we must draw their attention to Lord Barris. What I am worried about is that you lack the skill to do it. That is why Betis was chosen for the task. I cannot understand why Lord B spared you and gave you this mission. Because Lord Ban realized that after my awakening, defeating someone so strong means I am even more powerful. Jope gestured, creating a massive sharp aura. He replied with a smirk. A single powerful stomp from Jope sent tremors through the land, shattering the ground and causing a thunderous explosion that ripped through the sky. Bastion was completely stunned, unable to believe a half-demon monster could possess such incredible power. Because I am a monster, Jope said with a scowl. The approach of this powerful being toward their territory made the members of Sion's party anxious to depart. Sion, however, was reluctant to go because he knew their hunter party only consisted of 5 people. No matter how powerful they were, it was not enough to turn the tide of battle. From the very start, we were simply forced into making a choice. However, the moment we arrived here to investigate this gate, our attention was immediately forced back toward the territory. It is as if they are telling us we must return. If that is the case or not, they already winning. It feels like they are just toying with us. Humans, huh? Even if a monster acts on instinct, is it really necessary to just accept this after everything that has happened? If my guess is correct, their main force is still advancing on our territory solely to lure us to this location. And once their main group breaches the walls, the entire guild patrol force will be forced to fall back and defend. So the question becomes why gather us all in one spot? They must be trying to conceal something like a hidden dungeon because it would be extremely noticeable from a distance. Sion explained with a smile as he drew a diagram. Seeing his comrades still could not understand why the monsters would not do this in their own territory. Sion explained that the system prevents them from creating what they need on their own. Otherwise, there would be no reason for them to go through all this trouble. That is the very thing we need to discover. We are the vanguard for all the other hunters. In short, if we exclude our own territory and the monster territory, then our current location is the only remaining possibility. We just need to search for anything suspicious. Just leave the base's defense to the other hunters. We will focus on what we need to do, Sion declared with conviction. Hearing this, the whole group was instantly fired up and immediately flew toward their destination. They flew for a long time, and sunset was likely approaching. Since Doma could use his full power, just like Tesu, Sion decided to put Doma in charge of the combat formation. A faint glimmer of light appeared up ahead, causing Rayon to get incredibly excited, thinking they had arrived. His competitive spirit with Doma flared up. Rayon immediately channeled his power, accelerating and rocketing forward so fast that no one could stop him. What is that? How can we see it from the horizon? If it's made from holy energy, it must be a dangerous new type of gate, right? A sense of dread crept in. The whole hunter party rushed after the reckless Raon, who was charging ahead and causing a scene. The half-demon horde on this side had begun to enter Bothan's dimension. The monster-like demons filed through the new gate one after another, gawking at the enormous space within this mountain. One monster spotted a half-demon without a cloak and shrieked furiously. Lord Bane had granted him a name, and through the power of the system tied to it, he no longer needed a cloak. Bathan explained on his behalf, leaving the other monster a bit suspicious. It couldn't understand why Bane would trust a mere half-demon like this. Banbados had already left to handle another of Bane's missions after creating this chaos. Instantly, the demons split up to plant their seeds. Bathan also pulled a massive seed from her being and tossed it toward the portal, which looked like a gate. A crackling flash of lightning made Bathan jolt as if suddenly remembering something important. The reckless Rayon, who had charged ahead, stumbled upon a monster busy planting its seeds. They locked eyes, the tension flaring between them. Just as Rayon yelled, demanding to know what it was planting, the monster immediately cried out for Bane to come. Bane heard the call and paused in thought, She was about to go deal with Rayon, but Bathan stopped her, knowing that a hunter rarely works alone. Bane felt they had the advantage since Rayon had hastily fired a signal flare calling his fellow hunter allies, possibly from his guild. Now we can prepare for them, so let them all come. I already have a plan. Bane's eyes narrowed as she plotted. The monster over there kept calling but got no reply from Bane, so it could only try to defend the seeds it had just planted. Seeing Rayon gleefully unleash a skill to destroy the seeds, the monster turned purple with rage and prepared to charge. Suddenly, Bane's voice echoed from behind, telling it to just stay on the defensive and leave a trail. She would handle the rest. Bane firmly asserted to her minion that more members of the enemy hunter party were coming, probably on their way now. But if the plan worked, that Hunter shouldn't have been here in the first place, the monster wondered. That's right, because they should have been forced to return and defend their territory, leaving us no time to be discovered. But having a few here means they've seen through our plan. If we leave a trail, the other members of their hunter team will find this location. But I don't know what kind of skill set they possess. And if even one of them dies, the rest will surely retreat. That's why we must erase them all in a single coordinated attack as if they never had an awakening. Bathan smirked. Through her scrying mirror, she saw the arrival of the hunter party, and quickly ordered her minions to get into a ready stance. Her eyes widened when she realized the approaching hunter squad had a full 5 members. Bathan went on high alert, preparing to spring her trap for the arriving party. Meanwhile, Rayon continuously unleashed bolts of lightning. The monster howled in agony as it was struck, its body scorched black, and it was furious enough to spit blood. But remembering Bathin's orders, it gritted its teeth and endured. Just then, Doma and Jongsuk appeared simultaneously, creating a 3-pronged attack to strike down the monster horde. The monsters followed Bathin's orders, both counterattacking and defending carefully to keep the hunter team from seeing the pit that would soon become a dungeon. A larger monster, witnessing this epic clash, grew bored and tried to leave, but Bane forced it to stay and guard the seeds. It cursed its fate. The more Rayon's team fought, the more they were hopelessly pushed back, noticing a few monster demons in the rear trying to plant and protect something. Dongsuk unleashed a powerful fire, skilled to blast right through them. Ron couldn't get a clear look at what the hell they were trying to plant down there. Meanwhile, Doma was overwhelming the group of monster creatures, exhausting them to the point where they had no escape route as he cornered them. Something crashed down from above with a massive thud, kicking up a cloud of dust. It turned out to be Himo and Suwon, the final 2 bosses from the gate, finally revealing themselves. Jupe recalled Bath, and seeing that the final 2 had arrived, he revealed himself in order to disorient the group of hunter warriors. Jup wouldn't join the battle, but would instead search for a specific person following Bathin's instructions. Suwon's guild members saw that Zoe had a human-like appearance despite being... Suddenly, Suwon charged forward from behind, panting heavily as he rallied the team. Let's take them down. A few thoughts raced through his mind. We can't afford to be distracted by the system notifications. Stopping this is more important than figuring out the reason behind it. We must divert their attention and hide the quest gem right here. The moment Suwon dropped the gem, Bathin realized that the person she needed to find was none other than Suwon, the very one who had ruined her Grand Awakening plan. The Demon King of this dungeon observed the scene before him and wondered, what should I do now? He was torn between 2 options. He couldn't decide whether to protect the seeds or simply observe them. However, the small black hole monster beside him said, just stay put here. This statement slightly angered him. Then he yelled at it, hey! You damn mutt, can't you see the situation? He believed that if they just ran away and ignored the seeds in front of them, some hunter would take the opportunity to attack. Hearing this, the black hole demon suggested, you just need to protect us right here. The purple demon king was once again annoyed by its words and cursed, you damn half-breed. With that, he immediately dashed off, but not without leaving a complaint. The more you explain, the more annoying this gets. And the Demon King took off using a speed skill that couldn't be underestimated. At that very moment, something else was running parallel to him. He quickly stopped and realized the person beside him was his own comrade. He then hurriedly asked, what is this? Where did that bastard go? His ally replied. This is surely part of the plan. Let's focus on our task. Hearing that, he quickly resumed running. At this point, Suwon saw that the Demon King had caught up to him. They've caught me. Just as he had that thought, the Demon King also spotted him. So it was you the one who figured out my plan to open the gate. Immediately, he turned around and prepared to attack him. He unleashed a powerful blood-red skill. This attack shot straight towards Bo's henchman. Then, something appeared out of nowhere. It was the Purple Demon King who had blocked Suon's attack to save Bo's henchman. He then spoke to Suon, "You will have to face me." Suddenly, a snake appeared on the henchman's arm. He suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, you poor snake!" He placed his hand on the snake and used a system command become a dragon. Instantly, the tiny snake transformed into a massive dragon, known as the Spatial Dragon God. Suon, realizing the situation was unfavorable, quickly made a run for it. Seeing this, the Demon King hurriedly gave chase and called for his ally to stop him. It seems he's targeting the seeds. His ally heard this and asked in surprise, "What, the seeds?" Just then, Suon ran towards Doma's location and called out, "Doma, please?" Hearing his name being called, Doma turned his head and wondered aloud, But things were just about to get interesting like a final dungeon boss." At that very moment, the Purple Demon Lord monster had caught up. He was astonished by what he saw and cried out, "What is this? It's not a seed." Returning to Suyon, he grabbed Doma's hand and muttered the incantation for his level 6 possession skill. Instantly, a dense blood-like power manifested even larger than before. At the same time, Suyon shouted loudly, "Kill them all!" Just then, one of the Purple Demon Lords attacked Doma, but he swiftly dodged the blow. In that exact moment, Suyon landed a powerful strike right on the monster's neck. Next, he zipped past the other Purple Demon Lords. Instantly, a red blood-like substance wrapped around the monster horde, making them scream in terror. What is this? While they struggled to break free, the substance dragged them backward. And then a loud crash echoed. Another Purple Demon Lord, witnessing this, cursed angrily, "All you monster hunter types have such annoying abilities." Suddenly, something shattered the Crimson Torrent and freed them. They quickly escaped, murmuring amongst themselves, "Damn it, we missed the target." They were aiming for the 3 of them. At this moment, Doma's group, a small but powerful guild, charged toward Bon's subordinate. He was the one the Purple Demon Lords called Ba Thin. Without a trace of fear, this man quietly called out, "Space Dragon." His eyes opened and dragon scales sprouted around them. A hand covered in sharp claws appeared along with his declaration, signaling his true awakening. "I will choose this place." The moment he spoke, a surge of dark power erupted. This power pinned Doma's group in place. Himo exclaimed in terror, "What is this?" Suyon cried out in confusion, "My legs! Something's happening to them." It turned out the Purple Demon Lords were discussing Ba Thin's unique skill. Was that Ba Thin's doing, that sly bastard? I never thought he could pull this off. Suddenly, Ba Thin's voice rang out, "Open the gate." Instantly, something appeared above Doma's group, forcing them to look up. It was a strange circle that had appeared out of nowhere. The sight caused a stir among everyone present. Sensing the danger, Doma shouted for John. He immediately replied, "I know." Right after that, he charged forward with John providing cover. Suyon also felt that something was terribly wrong. He began to think, "I have to leave a reinforcement seed here somehow." Disguising it as a drop of blood, he quickly released his power. "I'll leave a reinforcement seed." Returning to Doma, he was unleashing a powerful sword/yelling, "Die!" John also threw a powerful punch while Himo swung his spear for a mighty slash. 3 different streams of power shot toward Ba Thin. Unafraid, he quickly countered, "Devour it." As he spoke, something descended from above, swallowing the 3 attacks that were heading for him. At the same time, it also pressed down on Doma, and even Suyon couldn't escape this fate. Himo was also pinned down, unable to do anything. The area suddenly became completely empty with no one in sight. After executing this technique, Ba Thin himself was panting with exhaustion. Then he muttered to himself, "This should be enough." He looked at the empty space before him, certain that not a single trace remained. Back with Doma's group, the strange dungeon-like landscape before them left them bewildered. "What is this? Where are we? We're not dead, are we?" John wondered aloud in a daze. "This has to be the power of some godlike system. What in the world is this place?" Dong-wook wondered, unsure of Bale's true identity as a powerful monster. Is he also disguised as a human? Hima wasn't quite sure. But what was that? Besides them being trapped, the Purple Demon Kings, another type of monster, were also caught in the mess. They looked at the scene before them and seemed to realize something. "Don't tell me this is..." Just then, Cyan noticed something. It was a crushed reinforcement seed from his system inventory lying on the ground. This made him curse out in anger. Damn it, I failed in the end. His words made Hema wonder. Failed. He then explained why he said that. I was going to hide the reinforcement seed there. It was a special tracking skill, but I couldn't do it in the end. The hunter army from our guild won't be able to find us. However, John argued, don't worry, we'll go back and inform them. He then turned to ask Dong-wook, you still remember the location, right? Of course, Doma replied with a dazed look. Even if we go back, the problem is, where is this place? At that moment, a voice echoed, you must be wondering where you are. A figure appeared from the darkness. This person revealed that this pocket dungeon was created by the White Fox. Hearing this, the Purple Demon King muttered, I see, so it's here. Another one was unfamiliar with the name, the White Fox. Suddenly, Bale asked, you must be familiar with the name Chu, right? Doma's group, of course, recognized the name. Teacher Chu. Next, he expressed his admiration, saying, isn't it amazing? With a power that isn't even divine, a human who experienced a unique awakening created an island like this. Hearing this Bardos, Masoi Shasi Bedos, Tantese Sodosis Corher Versailles Hersois Hersa Rectures Agase. Assert de Bewoodham. Carsis Herso. A single person, Baal then sinisterly declared, you will all die in this place created by the White Fox. Hearing this, John showed his displeasure, how annoying Hema angrily questioned. You think you can kill us here? Doma laughed like a madman and said, I'd like to see you try. A Purple Demon King suddenly asked Baal for permission. Can I kill them now? Baal, of course, did not stop him. Yes, I apologize for crudely asking about your intentions in such a sudden situation. From now on, I will observe without interfering. The other Purple Demon Kings heard this and cheered happily. It's fine, that's great. You're quick-witted after all. These Purple Demon Kings were buzzing about Baal, not noticing that Cyan was watching them. If you hadn't apologized, I might have killed you. Cyan's heart was in extreme turmoil. He thought we're done for. Nevertheless, he tried to reassure himself. I tried to leave the reinforcement seed, but I failed. Think of it this way, even if we can't get out of here, the Monster Hunter army can still find the gate. Bale, as if reading his mind, immediately spoke up to extinguish his hope. I'll deal with the reinforcement seed before you get to kill them. His statement startled and horrified him. While no one was paying attention, the dragon seed suddenly transformed. A gasp was heard. A mysterious figure smugly wondered aloud, how should I handle this? Suddenly, seeds fell from a black hole. The mysterious figure who suddenly appeared was none other than Bale. He gave a savage smile and asked, you think I can't sense divine power? His words made Cyan so angry he gritted his teeth, despite his fury. He continued nonchalantly, because I'm just a hybrid, I might not emit the power of a god, but if I were possessed by one, my tracking skill will let me sense even a sliver of divine power. Thanks to them scattering it in a straight line, the system will point the way, making it even easier to find them in this dungeon. He finished with a sneer, thank you for your kindness. His words made Suyan both furious and helpless, and he cursed inwardly, damn it. Bane spoke up saying we don't care about the outcome of the fight. A gate opened before his eyes. He stepped through it and said, we just take what we want. Before he departed, he left them with one last sentence. I will watch you die in the place the White Fox created. Suyan's mind was in turmoil. What should I do now? The beads I painstakingly scattered along the path have become useless. I even buried them underground as a precaution. But I never imagined someone could sense divine power. He worried, his thoughts racing, wanting to escape and report this monster to his hunter guild. But the problem is, this island was created by Chu. Even if I could defeat them and leave this island dungeon, I don't have the ability to cross the vast ocean. He himself was extremely wary of Bane. Above all, we can't escape him. His very presence is preventing us from leaving this place. His fists clenched, realizing the only option left was to fight. A glimmer of awakening resolve shone in his eyes. Suyan looked at the purple demon lords before him, wondering how to deal with them. We can somehow handle that type of monster. But the problem is those other demons in human form. Then he looked over at Ro and realized the source of power they saw on the horizon was definitely him. The enemies before him filled his heart with despair. There was no chance of winning. Just then, Bane appeared, transformed into a small black hole imp. He approached Betos and warned, "From now on, you are never to try and find me." He also said that if you do try to find me, you will realize I'm not here and you will flee. Hearing this, Betos asked, "Where are you going?" Bane answered honestly, "I'm going to survey the situation and report to Lord Ban." This prompted Betos to ask, "Will it all be over if we just kill the hunters here?" Bane replied, "No, kill all of Betos's minions too. It's true that wiping out the existence of the monster, hunters will end the plan, but if any of them survive, it will just cause a commotion internally." After hearing his words, Betos exclaimed, "I think I see why Lord Ban keeps you around." Bane retorted, "And why does Lord Ban acknowledge you?" Then he commanded, "Prove it to me again." Betos declared in a powerful voice, "Of course I will prove it." Just then, a voice called out, "There's nothing to worry about now, right?" The purple demon lords immediately replied, "Yeah, from now on, all we have to do is kill. Let's begin." One of the purple demon lords suddenly roared, "All of you get out of our way. Don't even think about interfering in our fight. You damn half-breeds." A contemptuous smile spread across Du's face. This angered the purple demon lord, who demanded, "What the hell are you smiling at?" He wasn't intimidated by these purple demon lords and mocked them outright. "It's hilarious how creatures like you, who are nothing without your power, try to act tough when your leader isn't around." An angry one shot back, "Oh, is that so? Do you want me to describe the taste of a damn half-breed like you?" Just then, another one stepped in to stop the two from arguing. "Hold on, let's deal with these monster hunters trying to clear this dungeon first." The one who had just argued with Rosung, still furious, said, "After hearing that you are still talking like this," but the other guy still tried to persuade his comrade, "Do whatever you want after we kill these grunts. If the mission from our guild is completed, even Ban will not consider the lives of half-breeds a big deal." So the comrade listened to his friend and quickly left. "See you later." The half-breed was not scared and replied, "Yeah, see you later." Suddenly, an exclamation was heard. "This is so frustrating," Doma asked irritably. "How long are you guys going to be like this? Are we not going to start?" Hearing this, Himo also chimed in. "Now," what Dongwook replied hesitantly. He quietly wondered. "Damn it, it is not my fault things got this bad, right?" Then he turned to ask Suyeon. "Hey, Suyeon, do you have any ideas?" Seeing that she did not answer, he kept calling for Suyeon. Seeing him being so noisy, Himo angrily growled, "Hey, shut up, Suyeon is thinking." And then an argument broke out as one loudly questioned, "How many more times do I have to ask? If we keep wasting time like this gate will destabilize. That monster horde will act first." Himo, not backing down, cursed back, "I told you not to be impatient." Dongwook, seeing them argue, also butted in, Hey, stop it. We should not be fighting." The three of them argued endlessly. Doma's face darkened with helplessness because of them. The argument continued heatedly. Joan loudly claimed that no, she was just being unreasonable. Himo, not to be outdone, questioned, "What did I do just then?" Something suddenly happened that startled all three arguers into silence. The purple demons looked up in confusion. It turned out Doma's power had just exploded, a sign of his awakening. He shouted at his friends, "Even with these monsters right in front of us, you are all just spouting nonsense." Seeing him like that, Suyeon exclaimed in shock, "Doma!" Even one of the enemies stammered in surprise. "That guy." Doma unleashed a powerful skill forward and said, "I am so frustrated I could die." This attack of his shot towards the purple demons. One of them exclaimed in bewilderment while another shouted in panic, "This is dangerous, get out of the way." Hearing this, the other snapped out of it and quickly dodged. At that moment, Rosung casually lifted his leg calmly, waiting for the attack to reach him. Then he used that leg to block Doma's attack, after which he let out a loud shout and kicked the blast back. Next, he lowered his foot to the ground, even though the sole of his foot was bleeding profusely. Suddenly, he let out a scornful grunt to show it was nothing. On Doma's side, he was still scolding his friends. "Why do you have to think so much? Just kill them all." Joan also argued back loudly, "You think we do not know that? We are doing this because there might be a better way." Dongwook spoke softly. "Doma, I understand how you feel." Suddenly, Suyeon placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Of course, I know that is the best way, the system even recommends it." Doma then let out a sigh and said, "Just think about killing." His words made Suyeon ask in confusion, "What?" He continued to assert, Stop thinking about this and that. Just think about killing. He slowly approached his friends and asked them, "Have you ever thought about just killing Suyeon?" Hesitated to answer. Doma declared firmly, "We will know when we win, so nothing else matters right now. So all we have to do is just slaughter them right." Himo enthusiastically agreed and high-fived Doma. "Oh, I agree too," John furiously shouted. "Who do you think you are to order me around?" Suan didn't hesitate to follow Doma's plan. "Sure, I'll test out my new skill." Dongshuk heard this and asked in shock. "Really?" Suan replied blankly. "Actually, nothing really comes to mind, but when I think about killing, I feel like my mind and the system finally start working." Himo heard this, then suddenly smacked Doma and said excitedly, "I can finally move properly." Her words made Swan click his tongue and reply, "Thanks." Then he declared with determination, "Then let's do it." The wind howled as Ba Thin stood high above looking down at the chaos near the gate below. He mumbled, "The White Fox." Just then something else appeared. 2 members of the guild were sent flying a considerable distance. A swordsman appeared and silently assessed his enemy inside the dungeon. "He's stronger than I thought." The Demon King laughed loudly and issued a challenge. "What's wrong? Do you think you can kill me with such a pathetic level of power?" Jogu heard this and quietly speculated. "He's clearly trying to bait me into using my full post-awakening power openly, perhaps to exhaust me." Just then, something flew up, catching his attention. Ronov and his allied monster horde charged towards Jogu, shouting loudly, "Everyone, kill the White Fox." Seeing this, every hunter on the field tensed as Jogu thought to himself, "Even if I wipe everything out, I'll still conserve my strength because I don't know what will happen next. That's why I've been holding back. But in the end, it's just delaying the inevitable." He mumbled to himself. "Then it's time I revealed my true form." He and the monsters all froze confused by what was happening as a light began to grow brighter and brighter. Sunlight suddenly burst forth and the monsters, unable to evade it, began to disintegrate. They screamed in agony before vanishing in front of Jogu. Startled, Ronov quickly slammed his axe into the ground to use as a shield. The surrounding monsters screamed as if they were witnessing hell itself. Rays of light slipped past the axe, searing parts of Ronov's skin. He screamed in terror. The demon Barris realized what was happening. He turned toward the light and said, "He's here." His face filled with dread, recognizing the one who had just appeared. The mortal who turns night into day, in the dead of night. Sunlight suddenly began to radiate, growing ever larger. Ronov collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. His face drenched in sweat, he cursed under his breath. "Damn it! Someone like that had to show up before we could weaken the White Fox." Seeing the help arrive, Jogu's face broke into a smug grin as he laughed aloud. "You're here." He looked toward a man hovering in the sky, the one responsible for all the radiating sunlight. "What the hell are you doing out here all alone?" A man suddenly appeared, stomping his feet as he approached. It was the sun god in the form of an old man, battalion commander Kim John. "Did you think you were the only powerful one in the Monster Hunter Corps? And why are you holding back your full power?" He approached and scolded Jogu. "Unafraid," Jogu replied as if this was a common occurrence. "I heard Lee Sun was summoned by the elders. I thought the others had gone as well," the old man said angrily. "What, those old hags? Damn it, they really are a special bunch." The 2 of them spoke, forgetting about the monsters that still surrounded them. They charged one after another, intending to kill the old man. 3 monsters lunged at him while he was still rolling up his sleeves and talking. "Anyway, I think we should consider ourselves lucky it's not any worse than this." Suddenly he shouted, "Oh, and remember to properly discipline your disciple. Am I supposed to endure insults from a brat who brings shame to your guild?" As he spoke, he unleashed a brilliant solar light, a powerful skill that instantly vaporized the monsters that had just approached him. The 2 men seemed to ignore the screaming monsters, continuing their conversation to show them they were no match for a true hunter. "What insults?" John Gu replied. The old man scolded him as he walked over. "He should respect his elders, shouldn't he? And be polite too." As he walked, he flicked a beam of light from his hand, finishing off a twitching monster behind him. "He's not allowed to engage in behavior that weakens the system." John Gu replied with a forced laugh. "Ha ha ha ha, I'll pay more attention." He thought to himself, "I thought I was doing a good job since Lai Sun didn't say anything. But was I wrong?" The old man, Chu, suddenly called his name loudly. "We need to quickly organize at the starting point of this incident, likely where the gate opened." "Yes," he replied. It's time to reveal my true form. John Gu began to transform his body. Snow-white fur spread up from his arms. With a roar, his entire body suddenly changed shape. 9 foxtails appeared with a flash of light that shook the ground. A man named Lonov saw this, his face filled with fear and anxiety as he stammered, "A white fox? Is he that powerful?" The battalion commander and Gu shouted with furious expressions, "Remember to exterminate all the demons living in this dungeon." "Yes, sir." The scene shifts to a desolate mountainous region at midnight. A group of monsters were talking amongst themselves. "That guy wasn't he taken down?" What another one replied, "He blocked the force of the flying kick attack." Moreover, the signs of a second awakening appearing on his body are just absurd. "You must be mistaken, an awakening in a hybrid is impossible, but surely—" Another one interrupted him. "It must be some kind of demigod hybrid. Those types do strange things." They continued walking and talking in the dark. "Is that so? Because those who only possess the power of a god are nothing special. Let's just kill them after this is all over." The other one replied, "All right, maybe I saw it wrong." Elsewhere, Doma and his teammates were in discussion. Xion thought the lizard tail, the human-disguised demon behind them, is probably a hybrid. Zhang exclaimed in surprise, answering in unison. "A hybrid?" Doma asked, confused. "Hybrid? What do you mean?" Suan continued. "I heard about it from Tesu. The human-disguised demon is a hybrid born from a human and a demon." Dion trembled. "Oh, in other words, half of them are human." Suan went on to ask Doma, "Do you know anything about the weakness of a regenerating body? That thing could kill you. So don't worry about it." Doma abruptly cut Suan off. "My master is Chu," he told Suan with a calm expression. "He's always so reliable," he replied. Suddenly, a monstrous black object like a sharp spike shot towards the main character and his team at breakneck speed. They quickly dodged to the sides away from where the monstrous thing originated. At the same time, a horde of monsters wielding weapons charged out of nowhere, shouting, "Hold nothing back! Kill them all!" Meanwhile, Doma and his team, having dodged the monster's attack, quickly got into a battle-ready stance. Zion shouted for the hunter squad to form up, from now on split into 2 groups. Jax and Jean moved together as always. They began to charge the horde of monsters. Jax and Jean said in unison, "All right, we'll show you that you're not the only ones who've gotten stronger since your awakening." Doma Zion shouted for Doma, "Not this again." He looked at Zion with an annoyed expression. Doma was ready to fight with all his might. Turns out he was just being cheered on. Doma looked at him and grinned. He gripped the greatsword in his hand, charged at the monsters, and shouted, "I will kill them all with this skill." Zion urged from behind. "Hema, are we just going to conserve our energy and do nothing?" she replied. At that moment, the 2 of them, weapons in hand, also rushed forward. As Zion ran, he said, "Trust me, just conserving our full strength is what sets our guild apart from them. And when Doma fights a demon, there's no way he'll get hurt." He didn't forget to remind Hema, "Provide minimal support so as not to interfere with Doma's fight, all right?" She replied to him. Zion walked while thinking worriedly. "Yeah, the system shows there's no problem fighting the demon. The real problem is the hybrids." But luckily, the hybrids didn't join the battle. He was probably just a reckless fool infatuated with his own power. In the end, he concluded, "Let's conserve our strength for now." Over where Doma was, a series of crescent-shaped red light beams shot towards the monsters of power he had created. The monsters dodged just in time as a lesser demon shouted, "What is this? Who uses a power like that so recklessly inside a dungeon?" Its comrade quickly replied, "I told you that bastard's moves are strange." As the crescent blades were fired continuously, the monsters still managed to dodge them all. One of them spoke up loudly, "Anyway, watching him shoot wildly, he seems to be someone with a lot of power." The leader of the monsters gave an order to its minions. A similar attack power seems to have a cooldown. Keep closing in to prevent him from using his terrifying power. It began to gain momentum and shouted, "I'll go kill him first. Follow from behind." With that said, it and Doma charged straight at each other without hesitation. Suddenly, before the monster's eyes, Doma's face transformed into the face of the hunchbacked master. He began to change direction at lightning speed, creating an afterimage that the monster couldn't react to. At that exact moment, as if he'd stepped through a gate, Doma appeared right behind the demon with a chilling gaze. He launched an attack so fast the monster didn't even notice it. His greatsword had already passed through the monster's neck. He said coldly, "From now on, your nickname is the madman who wants to die." With that, his greatsword sliced through the monster's neck, severing its head from its body. The monster's two comrades witnessed everything and shouted loudly. The other one quickly replied, "Get back!" The power radiating from Doma's sword made them cautiously back away. The two monsters stopped and began to question each other. "Damn, it isn't he just someone with a lot of power, there's already someone like this here," at Doma's feet. The monster now, just ahead, still tried to curse. "You bastard. Gurgle." Not letting it finish, he quickly thrust the tip of his sword straight into the monster's throat. With a cold expression, he looked at its corpse. "Shut up, madman who wants to die." Hema, standing nearby, screamed in fear, "Blood! Hurry up and clean them up!" From behind, Zion began absorbing the monster's blood through the palm of his hand. He thought to himself that he never imagined it would turn out this way inside the dungeon. "I need to rethink this entire situation." Beside him, John asked his teammates, "Did you guys kill that white monster?" Dexter furiously shouted, "Don't you dare look away." Just then, a figure stared down at them from above a man named Barbados. He was quite an interesting fellow. Over here, the two monsters were still plotting their next move after witnessing their comrade's defeat. "What's your plan? Shouldn't we cooperate to take that co-hunter down first?" Doma's sudden shout cut through their conversation. "You wretched demons!" The two monsters flinched in surprise. He continued to taunt them. "Where did all that eagerness go? Surely you haven't been frozen with fear, have you? Don't be afraid, just come at me." Hearing his condescending words, the Santa monster glared with rage. The two charged forward as if to tear him to shreds instantly. "Don't provoke me, human. I'll kill you and rip you into 100 pieces." Doma showed no fear, laughing as he rushed toward the two. "That's the spirit. Cast aside all thoughts and fight to the death." With a whoosh, one monster raised its sword and charged at Doma. It leaped up, intending to slash straight at his head. Fortunately, he quickly ducked, dodging the monster's attack. At that very moment, Dexter rushed in, using his back as a launch pad. He leaped up, his fist engulfed in flames, preparing to punch the monster directly. At this point, his power exploded, sending the car monster flying. John saw an opportunity. He quickly used his power to dash toward the monster that had just been knocked away, much to Dexter's surprise. "Where are you running off to?" John replied. "I should also get a quick kill in." He rapidly closed in on the staggering monster, wielding a warhammer made of lightning energy. "Doma has already killed one of them," he yelled at the other creature. Suddenly, another one appeared behind him, startling him. It roared, "You said you were going to kill me." It laughed smugly, thinking it had him. "I'll put a hole in your head instead." Seeing his friend in danger, Dexter rushed over and activated his skill, Divine Possession, level 6. The small monster, before it could even strike, saw him approaching. Its face revealed a look of panic. Once again, Dexter channeled power into his fist and struck the monster squarely. It managed to react, raising its blade to block the blow. However, his power was still strong enough to knock the monster back toward its ally. The two demons, knocked back by his blow, now stood side by side. The monster, despite being hit, still grinned smugly and said, "One of them is an idiot, so this will be over quickly." After knocking the monster away, Dexter turned and scolded him. "What do you think you're doing? You're being too reckless." John retorted with a scowl. "Doma already killed one, you know." "What about Doma?" Dexter asked, confused. He continued to reply, "At this rate, I'm going to lose to him. I need to power up as well. Maybe the TO system will grant me a new Shaolin skill." Dexter yelled back, "No, John." Taken aback, didn't understand, and asked him again, "Why do we need to conserve our strength? Don't you realize our real opponent is some kind of hybrid?" John thought for a moment before replying, "I know, but—" Dexter reassured him, saying, "Stay calm and just keep doing what you're doing for now." He explained, "Don't be impatient, we still have a long way to go. You can beat Doma later after we clear this hard gate." He understood his mistake then and apologized to him. After speaking with John, Dexter's expression became serious. With an angry expression, he said, "I'll resolve this guild matter right now." The scene shifts to Hina and Sion. The two were now rushing to Doma's location inside the dungeon. Hina wondered as she ran, even if we provide him with as much support as possible, Shouldn't we be focusing on raising our own levels too? We're up against a demon that has undergone a secondary awakening, Cyan explained to her. No, this will be enough. Even if a direct confrontation is impossible, we can still block the enemy's attacks. She asked, still doubtful. But is that really possible? We've been watching him this entire time, haven't we? Cyan replied. I didn't expect this level of performance either. His expression grew tense as he thought. I thought he came from another world through a gate just based on his infinite power and his ability to wield divine energy. I never imagined he also possessed the unique skill of John Gu. Slowly, the effort Doma has been putting in is increasing our chances of winning. Meanwhile, the monster that Doma was charging towards calmly placed a black circlet-like crown upon its head. Doma continued his charge completely oblivious. Cyan mid-stride suddenly froze as if he realized something. He screamed at everyone around him. Run now! The ground beneath them began to erupt. Dirt and rocks flew everywhere. Doma quickly leaped high into the air to evade the monster's attack. It also leaped up, closing the distance instantly. The chaos below distracted Doma from the fact that it was now right in front of him. It lunged forward, thinking victory was assured, and sneered, "Farewell, Redhead." But it was never going to be that easy. Doma twisted his body to build momentum, spinning back around with his sword ready to end it. Bring it on! The blade in his hand swung down, slamming the monster straight into the ground and creating a massive shockwave. Cyan, worried, unleashed his power while shouting Doma's name. Doma, who was diving towards the downed monster, replied to his call. Awesome! He dove down triumphantly to finish the monster, but a mysterious purple energy suddenly shot towards him, catching him by surprise. Doma quickly adjusted his stance and raised his blade, beginning to channel power into his sword. Damn it! His own power erupted, clashing with the stream of dark magic. While the two forces battled, Hina and Cyan, witnessing the clash, rushed towards the spot where the monster had been smashed into the ground. However, they were shocked when it burst from the cloud of dust, charging right at them to attack. It leaped into the air, brandishing its weapon, and roared in anger. I'll get rid of these gnats first! At that moment, Hina fearlessly used her own blade to smack the monster's weapon down to the ground, stunning it. It thought with alarm, what is this? What is this strange sensation? But Hina didn't stop. She continued to press the attack, and the two were evenly matched, one attacking while the other parried. The monster thought, at the apex of her power, it's like the system is automatically changing. A crimson torrent, Cyan's superpower, erupted from below, striking at the monster and making it flinch. However, it dodged the attack with ease and arrogantly retorted that kind of attack is useless. Hina and Cyan used its moment of distraction to quickly create distance. It didn't understand and yelled after them, "Where do you think you're going?" And then with a crash, Doma landed on the ground, having descended from the sky. He looked up and grinned at the monster. Don't get distracted. Come at me, I'm the hunter, and I'll take all of you down. Hearing his disdain, the enraged monster roared, How dare you underestimate us to such a degree? Those humans. Just then, a one-legged monster appeared and ran up to him, saying, No need to raise the temperature. Just use this. The short-horned demon retorted, What am I supposed to do when I'm this pissed off? The one-legged monster leaped up using a dark magic skill and declared, I'll kill the redhead first. The other one started cursing and charged toward Doma. He ran toward the two monsters, effortlessly slicing through the magic cast by the one-legged one. The monster on the ground charged at him, swinging its blade. It shouted angrily, I'll slice that hunter into tiny pieces, Doma replied with disdain. Slice me into tiny pieces? Is that all you can do? How crude. The two of them clashed, trying to slash one another. The monster heard this and cursed, You damn bastard. The other monster that had used the magic skill watched them fight, deep in thought. Damn it, he's blocking our attacks too easily, he's impossible to deal with. We can't land a single solid blow on him. He realized something was off. Wait a minute, easily. But why hasn't he dealt any real damage to us yet? He looked at Doma's gloating face. Don't tell me that bastard is... Realizing the danger, he rushed toward his comrade and shouted, Get away! The other one replied, confused. What he roared with a grave expression. Get away from him. That bastard is pretending to fight while gathering divine power. It must be a unique skill from his awakening. But by then, Doma was already in front of the other monster, his face twisting into a dark, terrifying smile as he said, Too late. He swung his blade with all his power, aiming directly at the short-horned monster. The other one saw it was now unavoidable. He used his own ability, trying to hold back the immense power of the attack to prevent it from slicing into him. Suddenly he turned and saw his comrade about to be split in two by Doma's power. The other monster cried out in agony. Doma laughed loudly, saying, "Keep it up. If you two don't stop it, both of you will be chopped in half." He unleashed his power while taunting the two monsters. "Keep trying. Keep trying." The one being cut faltered, then used his strength to help his comrade block. "Just leave us. You bastard, we made a mistake." The other one cursed back at him. "You shut up." He roared even louder. "Get away!" Then kicked his comrade far away, much to his shock, the short-horned one said in disbelief. If you do that, the balance will be broken," the other replied. "If one of us lets go, we both die anyway." As soon as he finished speaking, Doma's power sliced through both of them completely, severing one of their bodies. He burst out laughing mockingly. "Ah ha ha! From now on, your nickname is Halfie ha ha!" The short-horned monster stared at its comrade's limbs scattered all over the place. He struggled back to his feet, wondering how his life, which he fought so hard to survive after clearing the last dungeon, could end like this. "I can't die like this." He glanced over at his other comrades, who were busy fighting, and thought to himself, "Damn it, they're in no position to help me now." He clutched his stomach angrily as he walked. "It shouldn't be like this. Why are we struggling against just one hunter like this?" In front of him, Doma was walking closer. His body erupted in a brilliant red aura of power, looking extremely dangerous. He taunted as he approached. "From now on, your nickname is Half and Half." Suddenly, behind the monster, a person appeared. It was Betos. He crossed his arms, looking at the monster with contempt. "What's this? You said you'd see me at the next gate, so why are you here? Did your guild's tracking system fail? You seeing Betos?" The monster spoke with irritation. "This damn half-breed, what is he staring at? Can't you see the situation we're in?" Beatos calmly replied to the monster. "Actually, a certain noble demon told me not to interfere in the fight back then." Hearing him say that, the monster's jaw dropped in astonishment. Beatos' expression then turned serious as he stared at the monster. It suddenly gritted its teeth, and after a moment its face contorted as it reluctantly opened its mouth to beg him. "I sincerely apologize for my previous rudeness. Please give me another chance. An opportunity only comes once." Hearing this, Beatos replied with a nonchalant expression. "But let's just see what kind of request that noble demon makes." Seeing Beatos' response, the monster bit its lip so hard it started to bleed. It must have been furious, but its defiant attitude didn't last long before the monster slumped in despair and said, "I humbly request a little more time. Please, just give me a little more time." But Beatos remained indifferent to the monster's words, not bothering to listen. He gave a scornful smirk. The monster was now seething with rage. Its face contorted in anger. It screamed furiously, "How dare you try to mock me? You filthy damn half-breed! Don't you realize how important this is to the guild?" Just as the monster finished its roar, Beatos rushed forward and delivered a kick that snapped its head back, sending blood flying from its face. The monster was knocked to its knees, collapsing on the ground. Beatos stood in the same stance he used to strike the creature. He said slowly, "That was close, you can't call him right now." A moment later, just as he was about to turn and leave, a voice roared out, startling Beatos and making him glance over. "Who do you think you are killing another hunter inside this dungeon?" So it was Doma. He was standing with a group of people and yelled at him, "He was my target from the gate, you bastard!" Someone next to him also spoke up, asking Beatos, "What about the hunter duo, John and Jongshuk?" Meanwhile, the other demon was engulfed in massive flames. It stood motionless in the circle of fire for a moment, then shot high into the air, laughing as it spoke. "This simple fire skill won't be enough to kill me." The monster laughed gleefully, its eyes fixated on something as it spoke. "No matter how hard you try, it's still just fire. I'll kill you first, then deal with that flashy guy later." The monster frantically charged at Beatos, screaming a curse along with its flames. As for Beatos, he stood his ground and took a ready stance, his fist clenching as a large flame erupted from it. A powerful skill was ready. "You can finally control your power." The scene shifted as if to a flashback, a voice echoing, "This is a great awakening." The young man sitting there was Dongshuk. He was sitting on the ground laughing and saying, "You can finally control your power. Ha ha! And it's just level 7, only level 7 according to the system." He said it as if it were an incredible achievement. Standing in the distance was Yun, the battalion commander. He watched and spoke slowly to him. "You only feel that way because of the one who came before you. Then, right after Battalion Commander Yoon finished speaking, John rushed up from behind Dong-shuk with a gleeful expression, laughing as he said, "Because I'm a genius." Seeing John's arrogant and self-satisfied look, someone just remarked, "You're only half a genius." As soon as the words were out, John stammered, What do you mean by that, you're half?" In contrast to John's confused reaction, Battalion Commander Yoon just spoke slowly. "If you were a true genius, you wouldn't be stuck at the same level waiting for Dong-wook to catch up to you. Don't you think so?" After hearing those remarks, Jian felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. He stood, stunned, silently thinking, "Does Guild Leader Li Shun no longer consider me a genius?" Battalion Commander Yoon continued to speak, "Now that Dong-wook has caught up to you, it's time to move to the next level." Dong-wook repeated the phrase as if questioning himself, the next level. In contrast to Dong-wook's composed attitude, Jian was like a child excited to enter a new dungeon. He excitedly shouted, "What is it? I'll quickly master this new skill to prove that I'm a genius." Battalion Commander Yoon said, clenching his fist. "The next step is divine power." The commander's words seemed cryptic, leaving Dong-wook and Jian completely confused. Dong-wook only asked a single word, "What?" But Jian launched into a chain of 1,000 questions. "What do you mean by divine power? Isn't that the first thing we learned after our awakening?" Of course, we both know how to do that. The battalion commander's gaze grew more profound as he spoke softly, "Like Doma." Hearing this, both Dong-wook and Jian exclaimed in alarm, "No, not Doma." Hearing the commander's words, Jian hesitated. He said, "Of course not. Doma can't use divine power, so he relies solely on brute strength." Battalion Commander Yoon continued speaking. "There's a saying that the stronger the foundation, the easier it is to build upon it, whether for yourself or for others. And no one has built their foundation as diligently as Doma." After a brief pause, Yoon continued. "When Doma breaks free from his incomplete possession, you won't even be a match for that monster. He's a threat on the level of a high-rank gate boss." Hearing this, Dong-wook remained silent, but Jian yelled, "Impossible!" Jian continued to argue, "That will never happen. In the end, it's all about ability, except for Chogu. Everyone else reached the peak as a hunter using only the abilities granted by the system." "Right." Battalion Commander Yoon turned and began to walk away. But he didn't forget to answer Jian's question. "Talent? No one has ever reached the top relying solely on divine ability." Upon receiving the commander's answer, he was dumbfounded. "What? That's impossible." Battalion Commander Yoon walked over to a nearby rock and sat down to rest. Then he continued, "Do you know why everyone admires Chogu?" Hearing Yoon say this, both Dong-wook and Jian were puzzled. It was Dong-wook who spoke up. "It's because he reached the pinnacle using only divine power." A moment later, Battalion Commander Yoon pointed to the side and said to them both, "That's correct." And that statement can be interpreted in another way. Battalion Commander Yoon crossed his legs and continued. "To reach the top with only divine power, that's the point I'm making. Are you aware of the skill Chogu uses to release divine power in the shape of a crescent moon?" Hearing the commander, Jian spoke up enthusiastically. "Of course I know. I use it too." When Jian said that, Dong-wook added, "More than just knowing about it, I want to experience it myself." Hearing this, Jian looked puzzled, and Battalion Commander Yoon began to explain calmly. "Controlling and regulating divine power, which scatters freely like a wildfire, is an incredibly difficult task, like taming a wild monster. Chogu infuses that divine power into his sword, keeping it contained, and even when that concentrated power leaves the blade, it still maintains its sharp form. Even for a high-level hunter considered as talented as you two, that is a difficult skill that a hunter like you may never achieve in your lifetime." After hearing Commander Yoon's explanation, Jinho asked, "What you just mentioned, does it have to do with another person's power?" Battalion Commander Yoon replied, "Of course, you might think the skill I mentioned is executed through a divine ability granted by the system, not raw power." Hearing this, Jinho's eyes widened in surprise. Both he and Jun stood motionless, listening to the commander speak. To just shoot fire and lightning in a desired direction and change its shape as needed, although it's very difficult with divine power alone. It's easy enough for all of you to do with your innate abilities. After a brief pause, Commander Yoon continued, "That's why so many people have reached the peak based on their innate abilities after their awakening." June suddenly spoke up, but you just said it's impossible to reach the top with innate abilities alone. Commander Yoon answered June. That's right, because there are limits to those abilities. After hearing the commander finish, Jinho suddenly exclaimed, "Is the next step teaching us how a hunter can overcome those limits with divine power?" The commander gave a knowing smirk. Then Commander Yoon shouted, "Prepare yourselves! If innate ability is talent, then divine power is perseverance, and it will never be easy seeing this." Both Jinho and June shouted in unison, "Yes, sir." From now on, our guild begins training to combine innate abilities with divine power. Back in the present, as the monster charged down from above with a roar. Dai in Flames Jinho stood below and clenched his fist as fire erupted around his hand. "Thanks for dropping your guard," Jinho shouted. "Now die by the power of my skill," and immediately thrust his fist towards the monster. A massive stream of fire shot out like a bullet. This made the monster freeze in its tracks, staring blankly. A few seconds later, the blaze rushed forward, piercing straight through the monster's body and causing its eyes to widen in terror. Its face filled with disbelief as its eyes bulged wide. The monster stammered, "How can mere fire do this?" A moment after the flame pierced its body, it began to fall to the ground, shrieking as it plummeted. And then it lay motionless on the floor of the dungeon. From a distance, Dion's figure rushed toward another monster, launching an attack. But it dodged just in time, sending dirt flying everywhere. Jun glared in frustration and yelled, "Is this bastard turning its back because my attacks aren't working on it?" The other monster shrieked as it ran. The monster was charging straight for Jinho, intending to attack him. Seeing this from the other side of the gate, Jun launched his own attack, muttering. If I didn't have to hold back my full power, the energy blast shot out just as he finished speaking. You would already be dead. That energy rushed towards the monster and quickly enveloped its body. At the same time, flames from Jinho's direction wrapped tightly around the monster's leg. Then Jinho thrust his fist toward the monster again. He didn't forget to ask, "Did you get it? Did you kill it?" Jinho's flaming hand rushed forward. It opened wide to strike the monster, which turned in startled confusion to look at the attack. And then it struck the monster. The flame and a brilliant flash of light completely enveloped the surrounding area. The attacked monster slowly began to deform. It let out a few muffled, unintelligible cries, and then, finally, it lay still on the ground. Dust and debris filled the air. Every time I use a new power, I'm reminded of how amazing Doma is. After attacking the monster, Jongshuk stood panting heavily. Even channeling power through a divine ability is this difficult. How can people use a skill like that so easily? From a distance, Dionshuk saw a figure waving. On the other side, Dawn shouted loudly, "Did you kill the beast? Did you take down that monster? We were supposed to kill him first." Right? Hearing this, Jongshuk just stood there stunned and irritated. John excitedly shielded his eyes and looked around. I was supposed to help if things got serious. His smile quickly faded as he muttered sullenly, "What is this? He already killed it." Then he shouted, "Jongshuk, let's go quickly. We can't afford to be late." Hearing that, Jongshuk grunted in agreement. Yeah, then he also took off. Although he initially saw Doma as a rival, it seems to be slowly turning into envy. It's not like I don't understand how a top-tier hunter feels. Lei Sun suddenly used a power the master said we could never use in our lifetime, as if to show us. It was like a second awakening. If we show Doma things, we'll get better, and we can also use the power Lei Sun taught us, maybe even join the same guild. Jongshuk's eyes were fixed ahead as he thought to himself. We are also on our way to the top. Doma stood below, craning his neck and yelling, "Who do you think you are, killing the boss of this gate without permission?" That was my kill. "You bastard," she. On, standing to the side, wondered, "What is this? Am I seeing things?" Himo, standing next to him, also asked, "What about Dawn and Dionshuk?" Just then, Dawn jumped down, causing Himo to sigh in relief. "Oh, there you are," a red-haired guy roared. "We also killed ours a while ago. So it's a draw." It was a draw, but it seemed Doma wasn't listening. He scratched his ear and replied dismissively, "What are you talking about?" From a distance, he saw Jongshuk running over and taunted him. "Why are you only showing up now? You're too late." Seeing this, Himo spoke up. "It's not that late, we just finished too." Hearing this, John let out a chuckle and replied, "Ah, so that means we were faster, right?" He then walked over, slung an arm around his shoulder, and laughed loudly. "Jongshuk, we won." This behavior left Jongshuk confused. He mumbled what, from afar, Himo's voice called out. You said it was a draw earlier. John, excited as a kid with candy, enthusiastically said, That one is a half-demon. You're the last one, I'll kill you. Hearing this, the man named Bados exclaimed, I see, so it's my turn to die. Then he suddenly turned and called out to the red-haired guy, Is that bastard ignoring me? While being dragged away by Dong Shuk for being too loud, Don kept shouting, Let me go. I have to kill him. How dare he ignore me? Meanwhile, the other guy froze upon being called Red Hair. His mouth repeated the name Red Hair. A moment later he roared, Call me by my name. My name is Doma. Hearing this from a distance, Beto smirked and mumbled, Doma! Shion was suddenly startled, his gaze unconsciously shifting somewhere. That Bados fellow suddenly revealed a ferocious expression and said, My name is R. Hearing this, Doma's attitude shifted to excitement. A notification from the system must have popped. He bent over and charged towards Betos, thinking to himself as he rushed forward, You're ignoring my name and my presence as if I'm just another mob in this dungeon. I will kill you and grant you a new name. Betos saw this and just smirked. He also rushed forward to confront Doma with the same question. Give me a new name. With that, both Doma and Bados charged at each other, beginning their fight in front of everyone. A voice rang out, Calm down a bit. Over on the side, Dong Shuk had Dion in a headlock with his forearm and was dragging him away. As they struggled back and forth, the two of them yelled, Hey, why aren't you stopping Doma while you're holding me back? Hearing this, Dong Shuk replied, That's because you're trying to fight while you're too worked up. Calm down. Suwon, who was standing on the sideline, suddenly spoke up. He said, I'm really not mistaken. He's using his second awakening. Hearing this, Dong Shuk was shocked. What, a second awakening? How can a half-monster hybrid possibly achieve a second awakening? Suwon turned to face Dong Shuk as a stream of red blood flowed from his hand, arching like a rainbow as he activated his blood skill. He began to explain to Dong Shuk. I remember our guildmaster Tesu saying that half-breeds can't even activate their first awakening, let alone a second one. Hearing this, Himo laughed and asked, So what does it matter? We feel uneasy because we think we're about to kill a person. But isn't it better now that he's become more of a monster? Right? Dong Shuk stood at a distance. His arm still locked around Dion's neck to stop him from struggling, while he himself turned to agree with Himo. That's right. There are always exceptions to every rule. When Himo heard Dong Shuk agree with her, she grew even more excited. She laughed and said, Exactly. Just go back and report to the guild that there's a half-breed who can also achieve a second awakening. Over here, Suwon was still holding out his blood-drenched hand. That stream of blood seemed to grow larger, enveloping his entire body. Suwon. The power he possessed wasn't the ability of a god, but the power of a ring, an artifact that functions like a personal system. While he was still contemplating what would happen if that were true, a wooden plank suddenly struck him squarely on the head, stunning Suwon. Himo stood with her hands on her hips and spoke directly to Suwon. What are you spacing out for? Did you forget? We decided to just focus on killing like Doma said. Suwon rubbed his head from the painful blow Himo had dealt him. I know, he said. But isn't it easier when you understand your opponent's power? It's a core principle for any hunter. Clearing a dungeon. Just as Suwon was speaking, Himo interrupted. Yes, you're right. Suwon continued. It's like the difference between how Doma and how we wield the powers of the gods. Not all awakened monster types are the same, he went on and on. Meanwhile, Himo stood silently. Dong Shuk was still restraining Dion. The three of them stood there dumbfounded, watching Suwon's passionate explanation, not having the heart to cut him off. Himo rested her blade on her shoulder as she listened to him say, That awakened monster has a name, so be careful. The power we're seeing might be from the ring. Then he concluded with one final sentence. That way, we can prepare for any potential risks. At this point, Dong Shuk finally released his hold on Dion's neck. He immediately slumped to the ground with a thud. All right. As soon as he was free from Dong Shuk's grip, Dion grabbed his weapon and charged forward, boldly shouting, I'll go first. He was like a man on stimulants. This made Dong Shuk cry out in exasperation. Get back here. Himo watched his retreating figure as he rushed off, then she spoke up. Then let's go together. Just as Himo was about to leave, Suwon grabbed her arm, making her turn around involuntarily. He said, Don't release your power. This took Himo completely by surprise. She turned to Sion and asked, To kill that monster? Why don't we join forces with their hunter guild to be sure? Just as she finished speaking, Himo suddenly thought of something that startled her. Then Himo growled at Suan. "Are you thinking of something else, like some hidden skill from your system?" Seeing Himo's question, Suan calmly replied, "Don't worry, I'm also thinking about killing just as you said." Hearing that, Himo was silent for a long moment and said nothing more. She turned and chased after Onan, who had just run off, not forgetting to call back to Suan. "All right, I understand." Now Suyan was left alone, standing silently in the vast dungeon, thinking to himself. We can't kill someone with just raw power and no information, especially if their awakening granted them immense strength. After thinking for a long while, he finally leaped off the ground. As he flew after the others, he thought we need to understand what kind of person he is, including his divine abilities that seem to come from beyond the gate. Over here, Bados stared for a long time and thought his movements are incredible. Both Doma and he were still locked in a fierce battle. Doma, full of fighting spirit, charged forward to clash with Bados. Doma's strike tore up the ground, but luckily that Bados guy dodged in time, looking a bit bewildered by the sheer force of the blow. Bados thought to himself, it's impressive that even without using a special power or skill, his combat ability hasn't diminished at all. It was as if they were going all out every single moment. Doma advanced and Bados dodged the attack. As Bados was thinking to himself, "Don't tell me this bastard is—" Just then, Doma lunged forward, preparing to slash right at him. The force of the attack was like a whirlwind tearing through the air as it rushed forward. But Bados managed to turn just in time, raising his leg to block the fatal slash. He smirked and said, "You're moving with all your strength, aren't you?" Hearing him say that, Doma was confused. He asked, "What?" Bados looked up at Doma and said, "How can you keep that up for so long? Why aren't you using that immense power from before? Does a top-tier hunter like you need a cooldown period?" Hearing that, Doma looked offended and retorted loudly, "If you figured it out, then you figured it out. Why do you need my confirmation? Am I your teacher or something?" While the two were busy arguing, a flash of light suddenly streaked down from the sky like lightning, accompanied by a voice. "Don't you dare ignore me!" This made Bados look up at the sky in confusion. Zeon came hurtling down from above in a rage, as if he was there to settle a score with Bados. But Bados still didn't understand what was happening and just stood there staring blankly. Immediately after, a barrage of lightning bolts crashed down, striking the ground and shattering it. Earth and rock flew everywhere. Bados was lucky enough to dodge the attacks. He backed away, looking at the torn-up ground and whispering in awe, "That's incredible. It's definitely lightning, but it's holding its form." He didn't have long to relax before a blazing red light like fire itself tore through the air toward him. It was none other than Dong Suk. He ran like the wind across the ground on his bare feet. The two of them clashed again, as if they were mortal enemies from a past life. Bados thought to himself, "This is complete chaos. This isn't normal at all. I never knew fighting humans could be this much fun." Jong-suk launched an attack and then landed beside Doma. Jong-suk stood with his arms crossed, laughing heartily. "How was that?" Doma heard him and replied, "Now, even when I strike with lightning, I can maintain its form. I see it too. You don't need to confirm every little detail about my new skill." Bados watched their group from a distance and wondered, but why aren't the others attacking? He grew pensive for a moment, analyzing them like a true hunter. "Don't tell me they're trying to understand it," he sneered. "It's almost comical how they're observing us like we're some new monster in a dungeon." A strange black aura began to emanate from Doma's feet, a sign of his recent awakening. Even he seemed confused by it. Suddenly Bados leaped into the air, his eyes filled with malice as he channeled power into his legs, preparing to attack. Seeing this, Insuk shouted a warning to Doma, "Watch out!" The words had barely left his mouth when a black shadow shot past like a bolt of lightning. It grazed Doma's leg and continued its trajectory. The black shadow then zipped past where Insuk stood, forcing him to leap into the air. And then the shadow continued its frenzied rampage. Finally, it slammed headfirst into a nearby cliff face. The impact was so powerful it nearly caused a landslide, sending clouds of dust and debris into the air. But it didn't stop there. The black shadow shot off again, shattering a chunk of the mountain overhead and causing rocks to rain down. Suyeon, Himo, and John, who were hiding under a large rock, had a terrifyingly close call. John exclaimed loudly, "Damn it, that thing scared me." Himo, on the other hand, calmly said, "Thank you." Suyeon remained silent and observant. He clenched his fist on the ground, thinking to himself, with this, the power we're witnessing must be the amplified strength of the ring, perhaps a gift from his guild's system. As for Bados, he laughed like a maniac and yelled, "Come on, what are you going to do now? You can't judge me with something like this." As he spoke, a streak of red energy, a deadly skill, shot toward his throat, making him flinch instinctively. He reacted in a flash, flipping backward to evade Doma's devastating attack. Doma spun to a stop, smirking as he said, "What a waste, I could have given you a name. The guy who got his head sliced off while showing off his power." Bados, having narrowly escaped death, still found the energy to talk back to Doma. "Even after I displayed that much power, you weren't flustered at all. That must mean you fought someone at this level before, perhaps through a high-ranking gate." Hearing this, Doma put on a weary expression once more and said, "Isn't that obvious? Compared to my master Chonggu, you're nothing." At the mention of that name, Bados's expression suddenly grew serious. He muttered the name Chonggu to himself, and then a shadowy figure appeared behind him and spoke. "This place was created by a white fox." "Ah, you'd be familiar with the name Chonggu, wouldn't you?" Bados returned to his arrogant posture. He sneered and said, "The white fox who created this island is your master. I've been wanting to fight that white fox, and this is working out perfectly. If I kill you, your master will get angry, won't he?" Seeing his chance, Doma retorted, "He'd also be happy if I killed you, you damn monster." Bados let out a loud laugh. "Ah ha ha! You don't have to say a thing!" His eyes blazed with the fury of a demon. He glared at Doma and roared, trying to provoke him. "Didn't you say you were going to kill me and give me a name? Well, then, I'll put my name on the line too. If you can actually surprise me, I'll tell you my true name." Hearing this, Doma replied with a bored expression, "I'm not curious, you damn bastard." Bados's tone became even more condescending. "It doesn't matter, because I'm only offering my name as a way to judge you." Doma, hoisting his greatsword onto his shoulder, looked puzzled. "What are you talking about?" he replied in a low voice. "If you die before hearing my real name, you'll just be another fool of a hunter who died without even knowing who I am." He replied excitedly, "Then I'll just have to pry that information from you before I die." "Right. Your neck will be severed before you even realize it." Doma realized something, pausing for a moment in thought, and said, "No, even when their necks are cut, they still try to say a few words before they die." Bados raised an eyebrow, taunting him. "You can do that too, don't tell me your only skill is running that mouth of yours." Doma confidently asserted, "If you wish, I will tear you apart and kill you like any other monster." Suddenly, a sound cut through their conversation, drawing his attention. "No." John suddenly jumped down in front of Doma and said, "He will be trapped by my lightning and die." Immediately after, Dongsuk flew in and added, "I don't care how you kill him." He, along with Himo and Suan, landed around Doma and aggressively declared, "Our guild will definitely win." Bados faced the group not in a panic, but calmly said, "Everyone wants to kill me. But is this how it's going to be, like the hunter that Ba Thin was wary of?" Seeing him hesitate, Suan impatiently asked, "Who?" Dongsuk, standing nearby, was also filled with doubt. He looked toward Suan, who was standing behind him, and answered, "The one in the hoodie, that's you." He asked back, puzzled. "Me?" Himo took the chance to tease, laughing loudly. "The hoodie guy." Bados looked at him seriously and reminded him, "You're moving on your own orders, aren't you? Stop analyzing my system and just attack me with all your strength. You have a chance to win, don't you?" Suan just calmly replied, "I have no intention of doing that until I figure out the unique skill that comes from your god." He furrowed his brow, confused, and said, "What is this? Is it just because of that? I can tell you if you want." He looked at him suspiciously. Bados denied it. "I don't have a skill like a god's." Himo angrily questioned him loudly. "You're kidding, I heard everything from Tishunim. Half-demons can't achieve an awakening with their demon rings and use the power of a god." Suan remained silent in the back, thinking. Bados opened his mouth to refute her. "Wouldn't it be strange for you to say that, because I am using the power from my ring's awakening?" Himo was at a loss for words and could only stammer a reply to that. He stood there nonchalantly revealing it without hesitation. "Before you we had a special case, a hunter who awakened his ring but couldn't use the power of a god. Do you believe me now?" Suan replied, "I've also never heard of a monster-class demon who could use both." His eyes were still full of suspicion as he spoke. "But I can't believe everything you say." Bados put his hands on his hips and asked Suan, "If you don't use all your power, you will die one by one like fodder in a dungeon." Do you accept that?" he asserted. "That won't happen. I know what kind of hunter you are." He wondered. Someone like me, Beidos, was annoyed, grimacing as he listened to him say, "The kind who gets strong just to show off after clearing a gate." Doma's group stood before him, confident as if they already knew the outcome. Suan continued his lecture. "People like you eventually become arrogant and get beaten to a pulp. You'll be forced to go all out. At that point we will settle this with all of our strength." Beidos sneered lightly with contempt. "You talk as if you know." Suan didn't deny it as he replied. "Of course you have no intention of landing a fatal blow. You're just trying to dominate them with every ounce of power your unique system grants you, right?" Seeing his true intentions laid bare, he gritted his teeth in anger and listened silently as Suan continued. "It's as if you want us to tell you how strong you are." Suan paid no mind to Beidos's mood and continued his taunts. "How desperate for validation must a hunter be to fight for it even from his enemies?" Suan concluded with a scornful remark. "That's just proof your life is nothing but a reflection of your inferiority complex and self-doubt." The moment he finished speaking, Beidos charged forward, aiming directly at Suan to the astonishment of everyone around. Himo reacted instantly, her eyes flashing, as she swiftly moved to block his kick. Beidos's attack was diverted by Himo's unexpected counter. Suan watched him and thought to himself, "I thought he was trying to provoke me, but these are all just warning shots." He couldn't help but assess silently. "Are you saying you can't control your anger? What a shame." Beidos sneered, saying, "Let's see what happens." Seizing the opening, Dion rushed in from the side to join the fray. His hammer was about to connect with Beidos's knee, but Beidos unexpectedly leaped back with incredible speed, dodging the attack. Beidos slid to a stop, maintaining his distance from Doma's group. He began to seriously gather a dark power at his feet, a terrifying skill indeed. Jong-suk was about to charge into battle and opened his mouth to speak. Damn it! But an arm quickly grabbed his shoulder, holding him back. Beidos kicked the mass of black energy toward the group. Doma gripped his greatsword tightly and swung it forward. The massive blade unleashed a wave of light, slicing the dark energy from the monster in two. Beidos watched in shock as a blade of pure energy flew toward him. He dodged it by leaning to the side at the last possible second. Beidos surveyed the devastation before him and marveled silently. "That kid is incredible. That's a high-level technique you'd only see in a high-rank dungeon raid." Just by compressing his power, he was able to split that massive energy. He watched him excitedly, thinking he could surely do something similar with the power of the ring. Terrifying thoughts formed in Beidos's mind as he schemed. "After this battle with this guild, I will make all of those skills my own." Daeon once again charged at Beidos with his hammer, yelling, "Don't get distracted by the lightning." In the blink of an eye, Beidos teleported to his side, aiming a kick at his head, and said, "Wouldn't he go insane if one of you were to die?" But Daeon wasn't so easily beaten. A flash of lightning erupted, effortlessly neutralizing Beidos's move. At the same time, Daeon asked, "Who's going to die?" Beidos glared at him and replied angrily, "Are you trying to brag that you're faster than me, you curly-haired punk?" Orbs of light began to appear surrounding Beidos. Daeon replied seriously, "I'm just showing off my level 7 speed, a rare awakening." In a moment of distraction, he vanished from before Beidos's eyes. Beidos scanned his surroundings warily like a beast that just escaped a high-rank gate. Dozens of lightning bolts suddenly surrounded him. Daeon expertly weaved between them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As his hammer descended, Beidos began to unleash a counterattack. He drew a circle on the ground with his foot. Before the lightning bolts could strike him, Beidos quickly activated a defensive skill, summoning a black barrier to protect himself. The barrier successfully blocked the barrage of lightning aimed at him. John stood to the side, carefully observing the situation unfold. He once again used his power to create an orb of thunder. John yelled as he hurled the orb at Beidos. It was a special core of lightning imbued with the power of a god. It flew towards him, piercing through the thick smoke. A massive wave of energy crashed down, unleashed by John's shout. Suddenly, Beidos appeared behind him, raising his leg to strike as he spoke. "You're quick to dodge, but slow to attack." As the kick aimed straight for John's head descended, he wondered. How contradictory. A loud crash echoed as Jong-suk swiftly dashed in, blocking the blow with his reinforced arm, a unique hunter skill. Even so, he couldn't help but scream in pain. While Beidos was distracted, a blade shot towards his neck. Sensing the danger, Beidos immediately ducked to evade the attack. He leaped into the air, spinning to deliver a kick towards Doma. In an instant, one of Doma's arms was severed by the attack. It happened so easily that even Bados couldn't believe it. To his surprise, Doma ignored the pain, fiercely raising his blade and charging at Bados once more. He shouted in anger, "You're doing everything you can to land a critical hit." Doma then recalled something Suan had once told him. "The Lizard-Tail Lord will use a body of regeneration." Enraged, he powerfully swung his blade at Bados, letting out a curse. Damn it. Thrown off balance in midair, Bados could only raise his arms in front of him to defend. The blade came down, shattering both of his bracelets. Doma's expression at that moment was utterly terrifying. After that, Bados quickly put distance between them by leaping backward. But Doma simply stood there in silence. Bados was struck with terror thinking of the boss. Seeing the opportunity slip away, Zhongxu couldn't help but say with regret, "What a waste." That was our chance to deal a critical blow. Beside him, John gritted his teeth and muttered curses. Damn it, damn it." Zhongxu suddenly turned to look at the pensive Doma. He called out, "Doma, are you okay, Doma?" Zhongxu's voice caught Suan's attention. He was startled to hear the name and thought to himself. Doma, an immense power was continuously erupting from Doma's body, causing Suan to fall deep into thought. He wondered, a god. This felt like a true awakening. Maniacal laughter echoed all around. Doma frolicked through the air in the middle of the tense battle. He exclaimed with excitement, "It doesn't hurt at all, not even a little. Is being possessed this easy?" John watched Doma effortlessly toying with their enemy and said helplessly, "Has Doma finally gone insane?" Zhongxu was just as bewildered, wondering. "Don't tell me he's been completely possessed by the god, has he?" Suan glanced back at Doma flying about and calmly replied, "Not yet. We haven't witnessed the god's full advent." He raised his voice to explain. "Doma, it seems he's currently on the threshold between partial and complete possession." Doma landed, ceasing his movements. As he listened to Suan, he realized the pain from the side effects of his incomplete possession was gone. He continued, "And the power of the god." As soon as the words left his mouth, a notification from the system appeared. An immense energy erupted from Doma's body. Despite the astonishment of the two in front, Suan calmly explained as if this was a new skill from his awakening. There were no obstacles in the way. This was a stage where it could be used smoothly, like a perfectly integrated system. Zhang Seok spoke seriously to the one frozen beside him. Lunim said that the power of a god is perseverance. He looked at the immense power before him, and couldn't help but sigh, "How much more do I have to do to reach that realm?" Doma, thrilled with his current power, exclaimed, "This is it! So this is what it means to use the power of a god, a true hunter's might." He gripped the blade in his hand, lunging forward, and excitedly said, "The power of a god that I have used until now." Doma charged straight at Bados with immense power, saying, "I had to struggle just to make it work." He watched the situation in astonishment, unable to believe it, wondering, what the hell just happened? Bados stood there with his arms outstretched as if to embrace this deadly power. He narrated excitedly, "It's much larger than the power I saw before." In an instant, Bados ducked and dashed forward, narrowly avoiding the attack. He roared, "Does it take time to acquire such great power?" The massive blade flew past him. The mountain behind him exploded from the impact. Bados, as if stimulated, crazily rushed towards Doma, uttering strange words. "Have you ever kneeled before your god, or are you praying?" Watching the series of sharp blades rain down, he exclaimed in awe, "It's incredible!" Each blade struck, creating a huge explosion at Bados's location. Floating in the air, Doma laughed with delight. "This is fun. I want to slice them all up." While Doma was off guard, something materialized beside him. With a single blow, it sent him flying before the eyes of the people below like a monster from a high-rank dungeon. Himo raised her voice in warning. "Hey, you look way too excited for some reason." Zhang Seok spoke loudly, making a request to everyone. "Let's go. It'll be fine if it's Doma." Before they could leave, Suan controlled the red liquid behind him, blocking the two's path. He considered, "Don't go. It's probably best not to go right now." Himo asked inquisitively. "Don't go," Zhang Seok was also doubtful. "Doma has entered the battlefield and our strength has increased. Isn't this the time we should seize the opportunity?" Suan patiently analyzed the reason for them both. "We need to get used to the new power. If we leave now, it could actually be a hindrance. For Doma, he can now grow through battles." Suan bowed his head, lost in thought, as he broke the bracelet. He could advance to the front lines just through solo training to achieve complete possession. It seems like something is still missing. Then he opened his eyes silently, affirming, right now he needs to get closer to his god. Himo asked suspiciously, "Be honest with me. Are you just thinking about killing?" Suan replied softly, "No." She rested her blade on the ground, not very surprised, and said, "I knew it." He stood calmly and explained, "To be honest, initially it was a suicidal intention, but Himo didn't bother to listen and interrupted. If possible, let me fight a little before you change." Suan spoke his thoughts in a grim, continuous stream. "Even if I don't want to, I'll have to do it very soon. We can kill the half-breed demon and relay the information to the Monster Hunter Guild that guards the gate. We can do this, we will win right now, so just trust me," Himo replied with a puzzling attitude. "Of course, I trust you. Why would you ask something like that?" Dong-suk also spoke up. "You are the leader of our guild's raid team. We will follow you, so do not worry," she calmly asked. "So, what is your plan to clear this dungeon?" Amidst the thick smoke and dust, Suan replied softly, "I cannot tell you yet. The system will let me know the right time. So, please trust me and follow." Dong-suk complied. "All right." Himo, on the other hand, just silently assessed him. Returning to the battle, a gust of wind from a powerful skill passed by, leaving only a sound. A crack appeared on the giant wall. Bados pinned Doma against it, saying maniacally, "You have become astonishingly stronger in an instant. This must be your awakening." "The body of rebirth," he complained with dissatisfaction. "Why does every monster know about the body of rebirth but then forget my name?" He taunted in response, "It is probably because of the rare pleasure of meeting me." Suddenly, Doma asked a question that stunned him. "Do you eat humans too?" His sore spot touched Bados angrily, stomped on his two arms, crushing them. Seizing the opportunity, Doma quickly jumped away, escaping his grip, then slowly regenerated his arms with his unique skill. Bados watched him cautiously, unable to help but think in amazement. "Amazing. I have heard about the ability to regenerate, but seeing it with my own eyes is completely different from the rumors." He jumped down from the cliff, responding to Doma, "That is not why I am happy. Because I met a hunter who is both human and not human, just like me." Doma slowly took off his outer coat and asked, "Are you sure? You are a half-human, half-monster hybrid, but I was born among humans, right?" He replied excitedly. "No, it is true you are different from me, but you are all the same." Doma remained very calm, manifesting a blade from his arm, silently listening to Bados ramble. What if the body of rebirth was born among humans but had a demon-like appearance after its awakening? What if there was a hybrid between a monster and a human, and it had a demon-like appearance? He was still frantically obsessed with his reasoning. "We are proof that there is no difference between humans and demons." Holding the blade in his hand, Doma casually tore through Bados's thoughts. "It seems like you are getting tired, depending on how immersed you are in your own thoughts." Doma swung a straight slash towards him, confidently replying that he just needs to kill every monster that appears from a gate. In a flash, Bados appeared above him, preparing to stomp down. He shouted loudly, "Unfortunately, you will not have the ability to achieve your wish." Doma quickly jumped aside to dodge the attack. Bados landed, shattering the ground where he stood. He taunted him with a look of contempt. "I heard that the weakness of the flesh of rebirth lies in the human parts." Bados once again rushed forward, aiming for the hunter's weak point, saying, "While destroying the head of a body with rebirth leads to instant death." Doma used his greatsword to block this kick. The two sources of power collided, creating a small shockwave. Bados was knocked back, still relentlessly picking at his weaknesses. They say if you destroy the spine, the regeneration skill activates, but the body becomes paralyzed, right? He confidently asserted, "The weakness that can kill you is me." Doma replied with contempt, still powerfully swinging the blade in his hand, which was enveloped in power. "You think I would be afraid of something like that?" Another massive surge of energy was unleashed. Facing it, Bados didn't panic but raised his leg, concentrating his dark energy. He said grimly. Then he didn't hesitate to bring his foot down on the blade and roared. "What about this?" Bados poured power into his leg, not forgetting to say, "I acknowledge your strength and your skill." That single kick of his was somehow able to shatter Doma's attack. Bados hesitated, but then he looked up at him smugly and continued, "Your dull blade is not enough to test my body, which is imbued with the power of the ring." Doma, upon hearing Bados's words, suddenly fell into deep thought. Dull. he had almost forgotten what that meant. He recalled memories from the past. Back then, Doma was happily raising his hands in excitement after completing a guild mission, saying, "Done, done, done." Chu, observing from the side, thought in astonishment, "Is this for real? This is too fast even for accelerated learning." Then he smiled in satisfaction, assessing Doma. So this is what happens when a genius hunter practices with all his might. Chu praised him aloud. "Well done, Doma." He shyly scratched his head and laughed in response. "Thank you. I'll keep going once I understand it better." He slowly drew his weapon from its sheath and asked him, "Can you wait a moment? First, tell me what you plan to do next." Doma looked at Chu in surprise and replied, "There's something else." A single slash from Chu shot out, effortlessly splitting the sturdy mountain in two. Chu turned to him and asked, "What do you think?" "You can feel the difference between my attack and yours, right?" Doma's jaw dropped in astonishment as he replied, "Yes, it's completely clear." Chu looked at the bisected mountain and calmly explained, "As you can see, even with an equal amount of power, the sharper object has a much greater effect. A small difference can lead to a massive result. From now on, let's strive to perfect ourselves even further," he replied with clear enthusiasm. "Yes, sir." Returning to the present, a realization like a second awakening became clear in Doma's subconscious. "I must not forget what my master taught me. I can do it now." Gripping his weapon, immense energy began to radiate from him. Doma told himself, "This isn't about forcing power, but about extending it at my will like a function of this." An endless source of energy enveloped him. Doma silently affirmed to himself, "Become sharper." He muttered in his head about how to deal with this monster. The immense size of divine power is useless. I must focus on sharpening it, even if it means compressing it. Just then, Bedos charged at him again, shouting, "What are you doing? Are you just going to stand there like a statue before a gate?" As soon as he finished speaking, he attacked Doma. Meanwhile, Doma was still deep in concentration. A second later, he opened his eyes, a single thought in his mind. Sharper. Immediately, Doma sliced the shadowy attack in two. Not stopping there, Bedos attacked him again, asking in confusion, "What is happening? Your attacks have gotten smaller, but you know you can't stop me at this level." However, what he never expected was for Doma to attack him from above. And then he swiftly landed a strike on Bedos. Doma followed up with several more slashes to teach him some manners. After seeing that his opponent was no longer fighting back, he landed on the ground. However, from within the hazy smoke and dust, like a beast from a dark dungeon, he leaped out to attack again, but he missed. Next, Bedos taunted him, "No way has your god abandoned you. And why are you so weak?" As soon as he spoke, he was met with another slash, which he thankfully dodged just in time. However, Doma didn't let up. He relentlessly attacked him. Meanwhile, in the midst of the fight, Doma thought to himself, "This ability to ignore pain is even more dangerous than regeneration. It's a terrifying skill. This monster doesn't even flinch or seem paralyzed. He is just taking the damage because it has surpassed his pain threshold. The more I fight you, the stranger you seem." A moment later, Doma was knocked back a distance by Bedos, but he was not discouraged in the slightest, once again charging toward Bedos. Meanwhile, Bedos told him to snap out of it and use the time he was being given. In this situation, all a weak hunter like you can do is protect your head and your life. Just as Bedos finished his taunt, Doma, with a look of surprise and confusion, landed a clean hit. Then, with a decisive shout, Doma slashed at his neck, following up with several more cuts to his body for good measure. But Bedos just laughed heartily, saying how interesting a guy who only relies on raw power can actually use a tricky skill or two. The next second, he landed a solid kick on Doma's butt to his surprise. Doma managed to slash him back, the blade connecting with his leg and making Bedos cry out in pain. A second later, he was forced to retreat a few steps. It was only then that he felt his foot was bleeding. Looking down, he thought to himself, "Is this blood?" However, he just said cheerfully, "My, you don't say." And without making him wait, Doma charged at him once more. And then, as if by magic, Bedos's kick completely severed Doma's arm. But he was stunned when Doma deftly caught his own severed arm and blade before they could hit the ground. Then, with a resolute cry, he swung his blade directly at him. He was then utterly shocked when Bedos managed to dodge the attack. Furthermore, he taunted him, "Don't underestimate me just because I rely on leg strength. My system granted me fangs and claws as well. Then, the surprises kept coming as Doma moved with incredible speed, slapped him across the face, and said, "Did you forget that my very survival depends on my unique ability to drain preservation powers?" And he did not stop there. Doma slapped him again, then sent him flying backward with a kick, causing Bados to scream in agony. In the blink of an eye, his demeanor changed as he laughed and said, "How very interesting. In that case, I'm even more curious to see how a hunter from your guild fights without a sword." As soon as the words left his mouth, he moved with incredible speed toward Doma. Meanwhile, Doma's arm had already finished reattaching itself, and so he decided to use his fists, shouting, "Shut up! Do you think I am here just to satisfy your curiosity, but with another kick from Bados?" He managed to injure Doma's arm and leg once more. It was at this exact moment that Doma remembered something and muttered, "Ah, that's right. I forgot to infuse the divine power from my awakening into my bones." Bados mocked him further. "You are pretty quick on your feet, even if you try to channel divine power into that pathetic human body of yours." As he said this, he lunged forward to attack Doma from behind, and as Doma focused all his energy on blocking the blow, Bados swung his leg and said, "You are nothing but trash to be crushed by my power, a power unlike anything you have seen beyond the gate." A second later, Bados kicked Doma, sending him flying. He crashed hard into a cliff wall, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. It was at this moment, as he quickly analyzed his opponent's attack patterns, that he thought, "You call this an ordinary human body? I seriously thought my arm was about to be ripped off by that monster from the dungeon. Am I not even worthy of being considered an opponent? Damn it." Meanwhile, Bados arrogantly said, "Come on out, Doma. Don't tell me you're already dead like some weak monster." After hearing him say this, he was so angry he gritted his teeth. Immediately after, to his utter surprise and astonishment, the system announced a change. Doma decisively spoke and then unleashed a powerful blade skill, forcing Bados to hastily jump back and wonder. The sound was followed by a feeling of immense shock. But then, upon seeing the fissure he had created, he laughed and said, "Huh, Doma." Next, he charged out from the cliff face again. While running, Doma was thinking that today's lesson, a key for any hunter, was about predicting movements. The more combat experience you have inside a dungeon, the better you can predict and move in anticipation of an attack. This is a simple skill that utilizes this principle. Although its effectiveness diminishes with repeated use against the same opponent, if applied at the right moment, it can even make an illusion seem real. If you can make an opponent see an illusion, turning the next attack into a decisive blow will have a massive effect. A true sigh. At that moment, as soon as he got close, he let out a sharp cry and swiftly swung his blade again. Doma's swordsmanship skill was so powerful that Bados had to scream in pain. Moreover, the aftershock even impacted the cliff face behind him, and then it sliced a mountain peak. Rocks began to fall continuously from the summit. Meanwhile, where Bados stood, blood dripped and soaked into the ground. However, with one hand covering the wound on his neck, he could still laugh cheerfully and say, "I really thought I was a goner, you son of a bitch." Meanwhile, Doma, his combat system on high alert, shouted in anger, "What a waste. I wanted to hear your real name from your rolling head." The next second he stood up and replied, "So I've lost the bet about revealing my name." At this he relentlessly urged him, "Spit it out, you bastard. Don't tell me you're pretending not to be surprised." Then he quickly threw off his coat, the emblem of his former guild now meaningless, and replied, "Don't rush me. I'll tell you my real name is." At that moment, a hazy memory, a forgotten part of his personal system, suddenly appeared before his eyes. A blue-haired boy was speaking. "You have blue hair too. You're the first person I've seen with it besides myself. Then you can probably do this too. My name is Leah from this flower. Then we can call you Labelle." Labello. So after recalling that memory, he hesitantly replied, "My name is Lobel." As he said this, he suddenly clenched the circlet on his head, an artifact from a high-level gate. Darkness enveloped Bados's mind like a thick curtain. He began to recall memories of his childhood. Bados recounted in a slightly sad tone. He didn't have many memories of his childhood. When he was just a child sitting alone and lonely in a dilapidated rundown room, an innocent boy who still knew nothing of the world of the hunter and the gate, he would just raise his hands and wave them in the air, playing by himself. He only remembered being all alone in that room. The living conditions there were too squalid for a child's development. They passed food on a tray through a slot in the door like in a prison for the young boy. At this point, Bados said he could feel the presence of someone else whenever he received his food. The child would sit up on the solitary bed in that cold, lonely room. In Bados's memory, it was a voice that reminded him of the time whenever he forgot a voice as clear as a system notification. The child then wondered about the monster's ring floating above its head, along with a question that had been bothering it for a long time. How long had he been here? Gradually, the child began to feel empty in that vast, cold room, like a forgotten corner of a dungeon, being all alone, day after day. Just as he began to grow weary of the loneliness, Bados heard footsteps approaching, perhaps from a lone hunter patrolling the halls. The child was suddenly startled and looked up toward the main door, which seemed like a mysterious gate with wide, curious eyes. And then the door opened. A man whose face was obscured stood in the doorway, perhaps an agent from a powerful guild. The child just stared at him without reacting. The man ordered the child, "Come out here." In that moment, Bados felt a strange sensation, almost like a nascent awakening, as his heart began to pound. He was stunned by the man's appearance, which seemed almost inhumanly perfect, as if governed by a hidden system. The child remained seated, observing with innocent curiosity. This annoyed the man, who clearly lacked the skill of patience, and he repeatedly shouted, startling the child, "Hurry up and get out here now." The child began to stand up from the cold floor and started to toddle towards the dark doorway and the mysteries that lay beyond it. Stepping out of the room, the child curiously gazed at everything in the hallway with its wide, innocent eyes. It approached a nearby broken mirror. The strange and fascinating sight dispelled the child's immediate curiosity about its surroundings. It cheerfully posed and played with its own reflection in the mirror with pure innocence. Then, the child suddenly looked up, puzzled. It was standing in front of a door with the number 6 on it. It did not know what was inside, and a child's natural curiosity to explore filled its mind. Suddenly, an adult's voice echoed from nearby, causing the child to turn instinctively. "This is a warning. Do not stop walking." The child continued on, taking one step after another down the dark corridor. A while later, it began to run and skip playfully, just like any other child its age. It was the first time he had ever been able to run freely. In that dark, confining place, the pure light of a child still shone through. Bados shared in a soft voice. Bados's heart fluttered with excitement, thinking about the world beyond the door. The scene shifts to the child standing together with many other children. After leaving the room, he realized he was living among others who were just like him, each a potential monster. The faces of those children were expressionless, lacking the innocence typical of their age. And alongside them, Bados learned many things. Bados began his education with the other children, starting with learning to write and moving on to complex topics like proper titles. He learned about demons, hybrids, and humans, and just like that he grasped the fundamentals. Bados emphasized, however, it was constantly stressed to them that he and the others could not defy the power of hybrids and would ultimately die. And these complex sentences filled a child's undeveloped mind with endless questions. The instructor at the front continued speaking. The only way for a demon to survive is through the power of a lord. Time passed. Bados turned 8. Along with the other children living there, Bados explained that upon turning 8 years old, they would be transferred to another location. There he found many demons who were older than him. They ran and played, seeming much happier than the younger children. And it seems that in his 8 years of life, Bados's happiest memory was of meeting a friend in that place. Bados recounted. He met Leah, a child who looked to be his age, who excitedly ran up to him and spoke. "You have blue hair, just like me. This is the first time I've ever seen anyone else with this color. It's like a unique skill." Hearing this, Bados just mumbled in response, not engaging with the girl Leah. Suddenly, the two kids looked over as the entire group was led to a much larger building, almost like a guild headquarters. This made all the children incredibly excited. "Hurry up, everyone. It's time to go outside." Both Leah and Bados stretched to look at the scenery around them. Bados was in awe of the beauty outside. But while he was lost in thought, Leah suddenly grabbed his arm, pulling him along in a daze. "This way," Leah urged. The two children pulled each other out the door, with Leah rushing them. Faster. Nearby, a grotesque monster watched them in silence, saying nothing. A moment later, the blue-skinned monster turned to another of its kind with a peculiar glint in its eyes. "I'm starving." Seeing this, the other monster spoke up. "Don't mess this up. Go drink some blood and then come back." Hearing that the blue-skinned monster leaned against the wall and replied, "That was my plan." But why do we have to babysit these little devils anyway? Let them play outside, the older monster explained. It is said that without these things they won't live long. They might even find a way to end themselves, or something similar, a total failure of the system. He was about to turn and leave, but didn't forget to warn the other blue-skinned monster. This is based on my own experience, so do it right. The blue-skinned monster then asked with a look of confusion. You think I'm questioning you? I'm just asking. Outside, warm sunlight flooded the area, in a vast forest of golden leaves. Betos found Leah busy digging at the base of a nearby tree. He curiously approached and asked, "What are you doing?" Seeing his curiosity, Leah turned back with a mysterious smile, making him even more intrigued. Leah stood up, brushed herself off, and held a book hidden behind her back. She then turned to him and warned, "Everything you're about to see is a secret. Understand?" Hearing this, Betos hesitantly agreed. Okay. Seeing his agreement, Leah revealed the book to Betos with a look of pure excitement. Betos recalled how Leah explained so many things to him, showing him new concepts including the idea of a higher power. Betos stood mesmerized, listening to Leah's enthusiastic explanations about the book's contents. It was a true awakening for him, and there, for the first time, he was given a name. Elsewhere, a young Leah was stomping on the freshly dug earth as if trying to hide something she had buried. Leah's voice explained, "Rose secretly gave me this book." The scene shifts, and a monster stood behind her. It smiled, placing its hands on her shoulders and speaking. "Shall I tell you about the special reward you'll receive for being possessed? Almost like a powerful hunter gets a prize for clearing a dungeon." The children chanted in unison, "We will be granted the glorious collar and be given a name by the master." Hearing this, the monster spoke to Rose. "That's right, you all know the rules." After speaking, the monster produced a shackle, smiling as it continued. "So, let's bestow this glorious collar in front of everyone, shall we?" From somewhere, voices echoed in agreement. Agreed. The monster then slowly sat down beside Rose. Smiling gently as it fastened the shackle around her ankle, the monster spoke as if a gate to a new life was opening. "Do you have any last words for the children before you depart?" But Rose remained completely silent. As the shackle was fastened to her ankle, a dark energy began to envelop Rose. Suddenly, she spoke, "I will ascend to a height no one has ever reached, like a top-rank hunter, clearing the fire." That dark energy, a sinister skill, continued to surround Rose's body as she calmly continued speaking. "When I get there, if you ever see my face again." And finally, that murky darkness crept up toward Rose's head. She turned to the monster and said, "When the time comes, remember that I was here." Rose's eyes stared intently at the monster, yet they held no emotion at all. She said slowly, "Take care." The last image of Rose was of her trying to say a few more words, but they were inaudible. And then that darkness, like a corrupting system, gradually the monster, seemingly satisfied, slowly led Rose away through what seemed like an invisible gate, right in front of all the remaining children who were sitting cross-legged below. Suddenly, Betos saw Leah crying, her shoulders trembling. Betos recounted that it was the first time he had ever felt jealous. He continued to watch Leah as two streams of tears flowed uncontrollably. A desire to protect her welled up inside him. He wanted to make her smile. The evening sunset gradually enveloped the surroundings, casting a melancholic hue over the scene. Betos took gentle steps, approaching where Leah was sitting. Next to Leah was a small book. Leah spoke up. "Sister Jose said the most important part of being accepted by the Punt Guild through possession is faith in the Lord." Leah's tears wouldn't stop. She cried so hard, her shoulders shook. Leah emotionally continued, "I can't do anything. I'll be possessed and see Sister Rose again." Pausing for a moment, Leah said to Betos, "You should do it too." Hearing this, Betos didn't understand. He let out a confused sound as extreme pain enveloped Leah's body and mind. A child only 8 years old experiencing such agonizing emotions for the first time. She knelt on the ground and pleaded desperately with Betos through her tears. "You have to be possessed too, because I don't want to say goodbye again." Hearing this, Betos smiled innocently, then pointed to the black halo above his head and told her, "All right, if you do it, I'll do it too." Suddenly, Leah held out her pinky finger to Betos and said, "Promise me." With tears welling in her eyes, Leah told him, "I saw it in a book. Promises are made by linking pinkies." Seeing this, Beto said cheerfully, "Okay, I promise." Then he also held out his pinky about to link it with Leah's, like this. But from the black halo, a feature of his unique system, a black tendril manifested as a new skill and wrapped tightly around Betos's pinky. Seeing this, Leah rushed over with a worried expression looking at Betos. That was how he had his awakening when he was only 9 years old. And so the two children became as close as soulmates. Leah draped her arm around Betos's neck under the sunset in a forest of golden leaves. They played games together, looking very happy. At that time, Betos thought to him they thought they would probably die. As Leah and Betos were walking together in the forest, Leah suddenly saw something. She walked over, bent down, and said, "If we get caught, Sister Jose will be punished too. So you can't tell anyone, understand?" Hearing this, Beto smiled cheerfully and said, "Got it, Leah." Suddenly, Leah angrily spun around and shouted, startling Betos into clamping his hand over his mouth. "You can't just say my name out loud like that." "Weren't you taught that we are not allowed to name others?" Beto said upon hearing this. "Yes, that's right." After hearing him speak, Leah's expression did a 180-degree turn and she flashed a bright smile. Leah ran over, took Betos's hand and started running, saying, "Let's go together." Betos also smiled and replied, "Okay." Just like that, a brilliant light like a newly opened gate enveloped the Leah and Betos ran and jumped together across the ground toward a building in front of them that looked like a training facility for clearing a dungeon. Betos confessed that he had feelings for Leah, and a year passed. Returning to that gloomy, dark classroom, the children were still sitting cross-legged on the floor looking up at the instructor on the podium who was teaching them a basic survival skill. He was only taught about God and possession. Betos was just like everyone else. He sat silently. They always emphasized that anyone who failed their awakening by the age of 15 would be transferred to another place to start over. But if successful, we would receive the glorious ring and be granted a name by the master through the system. While sitting, he unconsciously opened his eyes and looked at Leah. Although the daily schedule of classes and sitting still with closed eyes became long and dull, but being with Leah still made Betos feel happy. And so Betos sat there thinking with a slight smile. He thought he didn't need God or anything else as long as he was with Leah. Then he suddenly blurted out, "I don't need it." This made the instructor exclaim in confusion, "Huh?" Then the instructor walked up to Betos. He asked, "Did God speak to you?" Hearing this, Betos said flusteredly, "I'm sorry, I was just a little distracted. Please don't mind me." The instructor turned back to the podium and warned him, "If you don't want to be transferred to another guild, then focus. That place is not easy to live in." Betos obeyed. "Yes, I'm sorry." And then he left the classroom, leaving the other children sitting there stunned and confused. Just then, outside the door, the monster spoke warmly to Jaws. "Come on in." After entering, the monster stood before the children and said, "Most of you here probably already know, but there might still be some who are seeing this for the first time. Right. At the tender age of 11, after a year of effort since the first possession, he has returned with a complete possession." While the monster was speaking, Leah stared from below and exclaimed, "Sister Rose," causing Betos to think to himself, "Rose, is she that famous hunter?"